Xiao Ran smiled. Boss Chin, mind if I take a look around? Not at all. Go ahead, Chin Sui replied without a moment's hesitation. So quick to agree? Was it because there were no secrets here? Or was she just confident that Xiao Ran wouldn't be able to uncover anything? Xiao Ran gave Chin Sui a smile, and she returned one just as calm and pleasant. Dangerous. The same word flashed through both of their minds. Su Xin, show mister. Xiao around, Chin Sui said, turning to a young woman nearby. She looked to be just past 20, stunningly beautiful with a figure that turned heads. There was something especially pure about her, a clean aura that stood out. But she wasn't an ability user, just a regular person. Yes, Sister Chin, the young woman nodded. Her name was Park Sushin. A spy Chin planted by my side? Or someone I arranged myself? Xiao Ran couldn't quite figure it out. If someone were to be placed close to him, logic dictated that it should be an ability user. So why send a beautiful young woman without powers? A gift? A distraction? Xiao Ran glanced at Chin Sui, who simply smiled back, giving him a look that said, guess for yourself. What was this woman playing at? An alliance? Help her take down a rival? None of it felt convincing. So what did she really want? Xiao Ran's purpose was simple. He needed to figure out what made Chin Sui tick. Once he knew, he could decide whether to fight or cooperate. Was she thinking the same? Were they both playing at pleasantries while probing the other? Fine. Xiao Ran gave a faint smile. He had spatial perception. What trick could escape his notice? Mr. Xiao, is there anywhere you'd like to start? Park Sushin asked. Doesn't matter, he replied casually. His perception was already scanning the area. Everything within range was under his control. But his attention remained on Chin Sui. How do you have things divided up here? He asked absently. She didn't answer, simply closed her eyes to rest. Her subordinates withdrew silently, offering no input either. Was there really nothing to discuss, or were they deliberately avoiding conversation in front of him? Too cautious. Or smart. If Chin Sui knew he was the one behind the raid a few nights ago, and still managed to locate Lu Qi among a sea of people and extract him in such a bizarre way, what did that mean? It meant Xiao Ran's recon abilities were terrifying, possibly beyond reason. Of course Chin Sui would be wary. So maybe there really weren't any secrets left here. Whatever. Might as well take a tour. We've got 4 main zones, Park Sushin explained. Standard housing, premium housing, livestock pens, and crop cultivation. Standard for the regular folks like us. Premiums where the ability users live, she added. Xiao Ran nodded. How do you grow plants underground? We got ability users, Park Sushin said with a soft laugh. One can emit light like the sun, the other speeds up plant growth. As long as they work together for an hour or so each day, the plants thrive. Ability users really did come in every variety imaginable. As they walked and talked, a group appeared ahead, heading straight toward them. Leading the pack was Lin Guangzhong. He was looking quite pleased with himself, followed by 7 underlings, both men and women. Xiao Ran wasn't surprised. His spatial perception had already alerted him to their approach. No need to step aside. The only reason he let Lin go last time was because of He Chunhua. She'd been useful in helping him locate Chin's base. It wasn't out of fear or deference. Still, while he felt no need to avoid confrontation, Park Sushin looked uneasy. She lowered her head and even positioned herself in front of him to block someone's line of sight. Not the whole group, just one young man at the very back. Lin Guangzhong spotted Xiao Ran and looked surprised, then quickly understood. So he really did show up. That excuse about being busy the other day? Clearly fake. He'd just been afraid Lin would steal his woman. Back then, he'd held back because He Chunhua was present. But now, no need for restraint. He noticed a woman standing next to Xiao Ran. Couldn't quite see her face, but it had to be Wang Lulu. Thinking of her alluring looks, Lin Guangzhong lifted his chin arrogantly and called out, Well, fancy seeing you here, Xiao Ran. Last time I asked if I could have your woman, you never answered me. He was confident Xiao Ran would cave and hand the girl over. Xiao Ran gave him a cold glance. No, that's more like wait, what? Lin Guangzhong froze. He actually refused. What gave him the guts? Xiao Ran, he said coldly. Are you tired of living? In this world, killing was no longer a crime, especially ability users killing ordinary people. No one would bat an eye. Park Sushin couldn't hold back anymore. She stepped in front of Xiao Ran, arms outstretched. Mister, Xiao is Sister Chin's guest. Don't do anything reckless. Wait, that wasn't Wang Lulu. Still, even though she wasn't quite as stunning, Park Sushin was attractive. And thanks to the underground heat, her outfit was light and clung to her slightly sweaty body. Her curves were on full display. Slim waist, pert rear, C-cup chest. Maybe not explosive, but definitely appealing. And above all, she had that rare quality, cleanliness. In these times, beauty was easy to find. But clean, untainted beauty? That was rare. Lin Guangzong's eyes gleamed with lust. He waved a hand. Grab her for me. But before any of his people could move, the young man at the back of the group lunged forward, staring at Park Sushin with disbelief and fury. You broke up with me. Because of him. Park Sushin bit her lip, body trembling. She wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. You know her? Lin Guangzong asked with a raised brow. She's my girlfriend, the young man growled. His name was Xiao Bo. Lin Guangzong raised his eyebrows, then slapped Xiao Bo on the shoulder. Your girlfriend's pretty hot. Mind if I borrow her for a few days? What? Xiao Bo stared at him, stunned, as if he couldn't believe those words had come from his own boss. I looked up to you, and you want to sleep with my girlfriend? Lin Guangzong let out a nasal grunt when Xiao Bo didn't respond. He loved this kind of power play, the thrill of dominance. It made him feel like he was sitting on a throne, wielding supreme authority. Xiao Bo hesitated only briefly before blurting, If boss has taken a liking to my girlfriend, that's her blessing. Then he turned to Pu Sushin. You heard that, didn't you? My boss likes you. Get over there already. He's an awakened. You even know what that means. Pu Sushin stood frozen in disbelief. Was this really her boyfriend? How could he say something so vile? How could you say that? She stammered, voice trembling. Xiao Ran watched with interest. In the apocalypse, nothing fascinated him more than human nature. It could stoop to such depravity, such absurd depths of cruelty and cowardice. It defied belief. He gave a short laugh and said, So, old Lin, what kind of power do you have? I could turn a banana into a fruit knife. Lin Guangzong declared with pride. Wait, seriously? After all this time, he still hadn't realized his so-called power didn't even exist? Oh, of course. Xiao Ran immediately understood. Lin Guangzong's whole persona, as an awakened, was based on that one ability. If it got out that was all fake, what would happen to him? His followers would probably tear him to pieces. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. That's it? Anyone can do that. He reached into his pocket, activated a spatial swap, and exchanged a banana from his hand with a fruit knife from elsewhere. To the others, it looked like the banana had magically transformed into a knife right before their eyes. It was eerie, mystical, unquestionably the work of an awakened. The group's gaze toward Xiao Ran changed instantly. Awakened were a cut above the rest, rare and revered. Lin Guangzong's expression changed dramatically. In that moment, he realized the truth. He never had powers. That banana-to-knife trick, it wasn't his. It was Xiao Ran's all along. Xiao Ran had only used it on him once, giving him the illusion of awakening. From start to finish, he had been played. You. Lin Guangzong pointed a trembling finger at Xiao Ran, caught between rage, shame, and overwhelming fear. His whole body quivered. Xiao Ran walked up and gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder. Excuse me, Lin. Lin Guangzong flinched and stepped aside instinctively. Xiao Ran smiled and turned to Xiao Bo. He's just an ordinary guy. No powers. Lied to you all so you'd serve him like slaves. Aren't you angry? The group's mood shifted. They stared at Lin Guangzong, eyes burning with fury. Come to think of it, ever since they joined up with him, he'd never actually shown any powers. So that's how it was. Just a regular dude ordering them around? Let's kill him. Lin Guangzong began trembling again. His voice rose in false bravado. WH, what do you think you're doing? I'm an awakened. Come at me if you want to die. Xiao Ran chuckled and handed the fruit knife to Xiao Bo. As soon as the knife touched Xiao Bo's hand, his grip tightened and his eyes grew fierce. Holding a weapon gave him courage. Kill him. Someone shoved Xiao Bo forward. He stumbled, then charged ahead. As he drew closer to Lin Guangzong, images of the man demanding he hand over his girlfriend flooded his mind, fueling a sudden burst of murderous rage. He lunged with the knife. The two men wrestled, trading blows, but it didn't last long. Lin Guangzong let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed, spasming before going still. He'd been stabbed in a vital spot. Dead. Xiao Bo, covered in blood, struggled to his feet with a grin. He turned to Pu Sushin and declared, Xin, I killed the bastard who was after you. But Pu Sushin took 2 steps back, visibly recoiling. She wasn't stupid. She just watched her boyfriend offer her up like a gift. Xiao Bo then turned the blade on Xiao Ran, his eyes filled with madness. Who the hell are you? Why are you trying to steal my girlfriend? He had snapped. He was lost in bloodlust. And what was so special about Xiao Ran's power, anyway? It was just a trick with a fruit knife. He could do that too. Xiao Ran didn't answer. He simply put an arm around Pu Sushin's waist. What the hell? Xiao Bo completely lost it and lunged at Xiao Ran with a knife. Xiao Ran didn't move, didn't dodge, just let him come. Xiao Bo didn't expect that, but he was too far gone to stop now. He stabbed again, and again, and again, 7 times in total. And yet, Xiao Ran stood there, perfectly fine. Why aren't you dead? That was the question in Xiao Bo's stunned eyes. Xiao Ran chuckled. Why are you stabbing me with a banana? Huh. Xiao Bo looked at his hand. Sure enough, at some point the fruit knife had turned into a banana, now mashed and shredded beyond recognition. Where was the knife? He looked utterly baffled. Xiao Ran burst out laughing and strolled off. Small fry like that weren't worth his time. A little amusement, nothing more. Pu Sushin hesitated briefly, then hurried after Xiao Ran. Xiao Bo reached out instinctively, but his arm dropped helplessly. He wasn't completely brainless. Xiao Ran had already let him go once. If he dared push again, would he get another chance? Most awakened didn't have mercy in their vocabulary. Killing was just part of the job. Catching up to Xiao Ran, Pu Sushin hesitated, then asked, Mr. Xiao, would you like to come to my room for a bit? Sister Chin arranged a private room for me. As she spoke, her cheeks flushed crimson. The implication was obvious. Xiao Ran glanced at her. So this was the bait Chin Sui had laid for him. Noticing his distant expression, Pu Sushin quickly added shyly, I'm still a virgin. I'm clean. Huh, that was rare. Pretty women weren't uncommon, even in the apocalypse. But one who still had her virginity? That was a rarity, especially in the later stages of the end times. A woman like Pu Sushin was practically a treasure. Of course, if someone had a taste for other men's wives, that'd be a different story. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. So she really was Chin Sui's bait. But just a normal woman, what trap could she possibly set that could ensnare him? Did Chin Sui really think he'd fall for someone like this? No. She was the head of a faction. She wouldn't be that shallow. So if he did sleep with this woman, that would trigger the trap? But how? Could she be planning to poison him? The body of an awakened had insane resistance. Especially his. His physique was on a whole other level. What kind of poison could possibly affect him? And even if such a thing existed, wouldn't Pu Sushin as the carrier be dead already? So where exactly was the trap? Xiao Ran wouldn't take a risk if there was even the slightest chance of danger. Besides, Pu Sushin wasn't so stunningly beautiful that he had to risk anything for her. A clean beauty? He had plenty back home. Women like the Su Qingmei sisters, Jiang Yuning, and Zhou Yunsu. Weren't they all clean when they first got with him? In terms of looks and figure, Pu Sushin could be called a beauty, but she wasn't top tier. Here, a clean, young woman might be a treasure, which was why Chin Sui sending her to Xiao Ran was a significant gamble on her part. But to Xiao Ran, it was no big deal. Nothing to get worked up about. He just smiled and continued walking. Pu Sushin could hardly believe it. She had actually been rejected? A man had actually refused a beautiful and clean woman? She stood stunned for a moment before hurrying after him. Her gaze towards Xiao Ran filled with complex emotions. This was truly a strange man. So strange, in fact, it made her feel a sliver of admiration. She didn't bring up the matter of serving him again. She had her pride, after all. Xiao Ran's senses tingled. His spatial perception picked up someone going to see Chin Sui. Boss Chin, the brothers ran into some trouble. They encountered a tough nut while scavenging for supplies. We lost quite a few men, injured and dead, the man reported. A flicker of displeasure crossed Chin Sui's face. So many of you couldn't even handle one person. The man gave a wry smile. It was Copperpot and his crew who went out this time. Their skills, well, they're not exactly top-notch. Fine, take some men and deal with it, Boss Chin said coolly. The man nodded and turned to leave. Chin Sui didn't specify whether to capture the tough nut alive or kill him outright, and the man didn't ask, seemingly already knowing how to proceed. This suggested they'd dealt with similar situations more than once. Xiao Ran mulled it over for a moment, then dismissed it. He wandered around a bit more, but his spatial perception, capable of covering the entire hive, found nothing of value, no matter where he looked. This meant Chin Sui, despite knowing he possessed formidable reconnaissance abilities, still allowed him to tour the place. It showed her immense confidence, unafraid of what he might discover. Forget it, forget it. Xiao Ran shook his head, deciding not to waste any more time here. Chin Sui's place was practically a model shelter. Just as Chunhua had boasted before, the rules here were strict. Ability users did receive preferential treatment, but bullying ordinary people was strictly forbidden, punishable by expulsion. Lin Guangzong had dared to be so arrogant before purely because he thought Xiao Ran was a newcomer ignorant of the rules and also perceived him as weak, someone who would cower if intimidated. In the end, Lin Guangzong had paid with his life. Of course, this place was only relatively fair. Violence could never be completely eradicated. However, compared to Gaoliang's and Shaoxing's settlements, this place was indeed several notches above. So, was Chin Sui truly a good person, a savior? Impossible. Firstly, someone like that would find it incredibly difficult to survive until now, let alone become the leader of a major faction. Secondly, Chin Sui had presented Cheng Qian's head to him as a gift right off the bat. Could such a person be a paragon of virtue? You gotta be kidding. No matter, a fox can't hide its tail forever. It's bound to show eventually. Speaking of foxtails, Xiao Ran couldn't help but think of Bai Rui. Time to go home and tug on a certain fox's tail. A warmth spread through him. Fox spirits were truly entertaining. Home, time to go home. He told Piao Suxin he was leaving. Piao Suxin quickly went to inform Chin Sui. Shortly after, Chin Sui hurried over. Boss Xiao leaving so soon? Won't you stay for a simple meal? No thanks. I have women waiting for me at home, Xiao Ran said with a smile. He reached the entrance and let out a long whistle. Soon, his leopard came speeding from the distance. Boss Xiao's mount is truly magnificent, Chin Sui remarked, a hint of envy in her voice. That was an ability beast, after all. Xiao Ran merely smiled and didn't respond. What if the woman was shameless enough to ask him to part with it? He wouldn't even give up a leather pouch, let alone his mount. He swung himself onto his steed. The leopard let out a low growl and then shot off like lightning. Boss Chin, should I follow him discreetly? Someone whispered, sidling up. It was a young woman, not particularly pretty, with a few freckles on her face. Chin Sui shook her head. No need, and it's too dangerous. Previously, Lu Qi had been hiding in an underground lair over 200 meters deep, yet Xiao Ran had still found him and taken him away easily. Tell someone like that? Weren't you just asking for trouble, or worse, to have your abilities taken? She had an alliance with Xiao Ran, but it was purely verbal. In reality, both sides had their own agendas. Neither had any real intention of a true alliance. Suxin. Chin Sui turned to Piao Suxin. Boss Chin. Piao Suxin replied obediently. Did he sleep with you? Chin Sui asked. And no, Piao Suxin answered, her face flushing with shame. Chin Sui looked incredulous, her brow furrowing in displeasure. Were you not proactive enough? She refused to believe there was a man alive who wouldn't take the bait. Piao Suxin quickly shook her head. I already invited him to my room, but he still refused. Did you tell him you were a virgin? Chin Sui pressed. I did, Piao Suxin said, her head bowed, face burning. Chin Sui found this even more baffling. How hard was it to find a clean beauty these days? Most women who had survived this long had been with a frightening number of men, unless they had latched onto a powerful ability user from the start. But ability users often killed each other, and leadership positions changed rapidly. So, even if they were with a strong man, they might be with Boss Wang 1 week and Boss Zhang the next. Across the entire New World, a clean, young beauty like Piao Suxin was one of a kind. A rare find, wasn't she? Yet Xiao Ran had refused her. Could this guy be into men? Chin Sui muttered to herself. Piao Suxin, however, began to tremble. Boss Chin, please give me another chance. I'll definitely get Mr. Xiao into my bed, she pleaded urgently. You'd better. Chin Sui shot her a look, her eyes cold. Lu Kang has asked me several times to give you to him. If you can't get Xiao Ran into your bed next time, I'll agree to Lu Kang's request. Piao Suxin was so terrified, she almost collapsed. Lu Kang? He was a physical type ability user, second in command here, right under Chin Sui. Though only rumored, it was said that dozens of women had been literally played to death by him. Being a physical type, he was naturally strong. During intimacy, even the slightest exertion of force could break or kill a woman. So, even if women survived an encounter with Lu Kang, they were usually left crippled, suffering from severe psychological trauma and physical injuries. I definitely will, she stammered, nodding repeatedly, her face deathly pale. Chin Sui ignored her, silently cursing her as useless. If Xiao Ran wasn't interested in women, her plan would fail. She had someone under her, a talent with a peculiar ability. He could make a woman conceive with a single encounter. She had already had this person use his ability on Piao Suxin. So if Xiao Ran slept with Piao Suxin would definitely get pregnant. Holding Xiao Ran's child would naturally give her an extra card to play. Of course, She didn't expect this one card to make Xiao Ran completely obedient, but having an extra card was certainly better than having one less. It was a casual move on her part, anyway. A little later, another subordinate came to report. Boss Chin, Brother Chung, has been killed. What? Chin Sui was taken aback. Chungu? Who was that? Xiao Ran had previously heard someone report to her about encountering a troublemaker, and the one Chin Sui had sent as reinforcements was Chungu, whose full name was Yu Chung, an ability user of considerable strength. But he was actually dead? This troublemaker was rather strong. Let's go. She decided to go herself. It couldn't be helped. In the entire Xintnd, she alone reigned supreme. Her deputy, Lu Kong, had only absorbed about 40 portions of abilities and wasn't in her league at all. He was only marginally stronger than Yu Chung. So, send Lu Kong again? He'd likely just end up delivering more power to the enemy. She led the team out. Their party consisted of only 7 people. Their mode of transport was a modified small sailboat. With a wind ability user artificially generating a breeze, the sailboat immediately began to fly rapidly across the snow, gliding along as if riding waves. The speed was incredible. Half an hour later, they arrived outside a commercial complex. The snow was littered with bodies, scattered haphazardly. All of them were their people. This enraged all 7 of them. The entire Wujiang region was their domain, aside from a mysterious faction that secretly targeted their members when they were alone and never dared to confront them openly. No one had ever dared to kill their people. How could they not be furious? Just then, a man walked out of the commercial complex. Despite the freezing weather, he wore summer clothes, revealing 2 brawny arms. He was around 190 centimeters tall, sported a buzz cut, and had a very sturdy build. His eyes were like lightning, sharp and piercing. The burly man looked to be about 30. He glanced at Chin Sui's group, his brow furrowing. Are you people ever going to stop? Chin Sui smiled enchantingly. She stepped down from the sailboat and walked towards the burly man. With every step, her slender waist swayed, her full hips rocking enticingly. The chi pao she wore accentuated her movements, each sway exuding a seductive charm that could make a man's throat go dry. Even her 6 subordinates stared greedily at her voluptuous backside, their eyes practically burning holes, as if wishing their gazes could turn into hands to grope her. And the burly man? He actually blushed. Chin Sui was shocked. Could there still be such an innocent man these days? No, you're 30, aren't you? Could it be you've never been with a woman? She thought. These men you killed. They were my subordinates, she said. The burly man seemed a little annoyed. Your subordinates are no good. They barged in here. If they had just taken some food and clothes, it would have been one thing, but they started harassing some of the women here. When I tried to stop them, they even tried to kill me. I was forced to defend myself. Huh. Well now, Chin Sui felt as if she discovered a new continent. Was this man some kind of rare paragon of virtue, materialized out of thin air? Let's have a little spar, she said. You? The burly man rubbed his nose. I don't bully women. You'd have to be able to bully me first. Chin Sui let out a coquettish laugh, pushed off with her feet, and with a whoosh, dashed towards the burly man at astonishing speed. The burly man was slightly surprised, but only slightly. He raised his hands to counter. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The two clashed, and the battle was incredibly fierce. The man was clearly a physical combat type, immensely strong, incredibly fast, with lightning-quick reflexes. Chin Sui, however, was not. Yet, she could go head-to-head with a melee expert, and after each direct clash, she didn't seem to suffer any disadvantage. It was extremely uncanny. The burly man realized this too, his brow creasing. What kind of ability is that? It's so strange. His punches felt like they were landing on cotton, the force completely absorbed. Me? Chin Sui giggled. Why don't you guess? She took a sharp breath, and her whole body seemed to inflate, actually swelling up a size. Her chi pao instantly couldn't take the strain and ripped open with tearing sounds. Fortunately, it still clung to her body, but inevitably, quite a bit of skin was revealed. The burly man's face and ears turned crimson. He couldn't help but turn his head away, snapping, "You shameless woman." He was thoroughly embarrassed. Chin Sui had been about to unleash her power, but seeing this, she couldn't help but giggle charmingly. This man's shyness was definitely not an act. Could there really be someone so pure in this world? No, wait. He's so strong. He must have absorbed many portions of abilities. How did you deal with the side effects? So, are we still fighting or not? She asked, retracting her ability. No more fighting, the burly man said. He glanced at Chin Sui, then quickly looked away. Wait a moment. He turned and ran back into the mall, emerging shortly after with a brand new overcoat in his hand. Without a word, he simply draped it over Chin Sui. If any other ability user had gotten so close to her, Chin Sui would have definitely attacked. But now, she let the burly man drape the coat over her. A man like this, he'd be a rare find even before the apocalypse, wouldn't he? "What's your name?" she asked, her voice unconsciously softening. "Duan Chong," the burly man replied. He even zipped up the coat and, as if with a touch of OCD, straightened it out. But Chin Sui deliberately leaned to one side, causing his large hand to brush against her neck. Duan Chong snatched his hand back as if scalded, his face flushing an intense red. Chin Sui couldn't help but laugh. This man was truly interesting. "You're this old, and you've never touched a woman?" Duan Chong looked very angry. "For a young lady, how can you say such shameless things?" Chin Sui was even more amused. "Then, when the side effects of absorbing abilities kick in, what do? What's it to you?" Duan Chong boomed. Many people raised their voices to hide their embarrassment. "So, you have the women in there take care of it for you?" Chin Sui probed. "And nonsense," Duan Chong retorted loudly. This time it wasn't embarrassment, but anger, the anger of being falsely accused. "You can go in and ask them if I've ever touched a single hair on their heads." Chin Sui remained noncommittal. Of course, she would conduct a more thorough investigation, but this man was too interesting, too rare a find these days. "Duan Chong, join me," she said. Seeing Duan Chong immediately show reluctance, she quickly added, "Isn't it tiring for you to take care of all those people inside on your own? But I'm different. I have a very large settlement called Xintnd. Have you heard of it? If not, it doesn't matter. You can go see it for yourself. If you move the people there, they can survive, and they'll be self-sufficient, not dependent on others for support. And you can be freed up to do more meaningful things." Chin Sui persuaded him gently. When dealing with Xiao Ran, even if Xiao Ran wrote a guarantee and gave his thumbprint, she wouldn't dare to trust collaborating with him, afraid of being devoured, bones and all, because she was that kind of person herself. So, her alliance with Xiao Ran was just talk, intended to buy time and probe Xiao Ran's secrets and weaknesses. But this burly man before her was different. She felt at ease with him. Of course, his background still needed to be thoroughly checked. Looking at Duan Chong's powerful physique, Chin Sui couldn't help but feel a little flushed. This mighty warrior, she was determined to recruit him. Xiao Ran returned to Qingfeng Manor. The family gathered, full of joy and warmth. "Should I bring back those 14 girls from Qinghong Tower too? See what interesting new powers they might evolve." Xiao Ran couldn't help but ponder. The more people, the more types of powers, and the more diverse and entertaining things could become. The manor was large enough. It could house not just 14, but even 140 people. "I'll make a trip tomorrow," Xiao Ran decided. Because Su Qingmei and many others had become powered individuals, their physical conditioning had improved significantly. They could now withstand the severe cold and go outside. Even without being in a vehicle, they could be active outdoors for over 30 minutes. This was a huge improvement. Su Ran, Yin Qin, and the other one who was the third of the only three who hadn't evolved were incredibly envious. But currently, everyone only had one chance to evolve, so they could only watch with envy. Xiao Ran took a hovercraft to Qinghong Tower. The round trip took over 5 hours, and he brought back the 14 women from there. Now, the manor was truly bustling. If 3 women were enough to stage a play, what about 26? Actually, apart from Bai Rue and Yin Qin, none of the others knew Xiao Ran was also supporting so many women outside. Su Qingmei and her group had certainly felt their share of jealousy, but Xiao Ran directly designated these 14 newcomers as servants, which considerably lightened their mood. Xiao Ran also gave the 14 women maid outfits, complete with white stockings. Standing in a circle around the dining table, all one could see were long legs. He had the 14 newcomers begin their evolution in pairs. He now had enough confidence and certainty to handle 2 operations simultaneously. This way, it would all be completed in 17 days. The absurd day finally passed. A new day dawned. Xiao Ran decided to go out. Where? Wujiang again, but not to find Chin Sui. Instead, he wanted to see if he could encounter her so-called enemies. Just because Chin Sui couldn't find them didn't mean he couldn't. His full coverage perception, exceeding a 2-kilometer radius, was incredibly effective for finding people. If old Gao tried that radio relay trick with him now, believe it or not, he could find them all in a minute. Today, he'd ride the panther again. The doggo certainly needed to be taken out for frequent strolls. And so, he once again chose Su Qingmei to accompany him. Among all the women, only she possessed true fighting spirit, the type who would never hold him back. In this regard, even little green tea couldn't compare. Moreover, Su Qingmei was a physical type adept, virtually unaffected by the extreme cold. Riding the Panther today was completely different from being in the hovercraft. Panther go, Xiao Ran grinned, and the Panther instantly shot off at speed astonishing. Su Qingmei clung tightly to Xiao Ran's waist. Otherwise, with the Panther's galloping speed, she really might have been thrown off. An idea struck Xiao Ran, and he patted the Panther. The Panther understood Xiao Ran well by now, and when a master had a request, would his dog dare disobey? So, the Panther started making sudden stops, and each time it braked hard, inertia would send Su Qingmei bumping into Xiao Ran. The impact, coming from a D-rank powerhouse like her, was pretty intense. After a few times, Su Qingmei couldn't help but pummel Xiao Ran. Stop messing around. Only then did Xiao Ran laugh heartily and let the Panther run normally. Let's see if I can find you a couple of female companions today. He dangled a carrot for the Panther. Unfortunately, the Panther either didn't understand or wasn't interested, showing no excitement at all. Before long, they crossed Lake Tai and were speeding across the snowy plains. Xiao Ran extended his spatial perception. Everything above and below ground within a radius of over 2,000 meters materialized in his mind. And if he was willing to expend a bit more of his power, the level of detail would increase further. Finding people? Incredibly simple. There were quite a few living people, but very few powered individuals. Although Xiao Ran estimated that everyone would evolve in the future, an inevitable trend, for now, the era of universal evolution hadn't arrived, so evolved individuals were still as rare as a phoenix feather. After all, normal evolution only had a success rate of about 1 in 1,000. However, how many good people were there among the powered individuals nowadays? The first one they found was a lone man who had invaded a residential complex with survivors, killed all the men, and was in the process of assaulting several women. Could such a person be spared? Xiao Ran had Su Qingmei take action while he oversaw things. This powered individual was somewhat like the Panther. He could turn parts of his body to stone and possessed great strength. He couldn't match a physical type adept of the same rank in raw power, but with the enhancement from petrifying his body, his overall combat effectiveness was not inferior. Moreover, this person had clearly killed other powered individuals before. His strength directly overwhelmed Su Qingmei. However, Xiao Ran secretly intervened, using spatial severing to cripple one of the man's arms and a leg, barely making it a fair fight. Neither of them was a master of combat techniques, so it came down to a battle of wills. In this, Su Qingmei clearly had the advantage. The powered individual, finding an arm and a leg crippled without knowing who had attacked him, was already utterly panicked. Tangled up with Su Qingmei, he quickly lost all will to fight and was relentlessly pummeled in the head by her. Although he desperately tried to petrify himself to avoid having his head smashed by a punch, powers were finite. When he reached a certain limit, he could no longer petrify himself and was brutally smashed to a pulp by Su Qingmei. His power was then directly absorbed by her. Let's go keep searching. Xiao Ran took Su Qingmei and continued the hunt. However, after a while, the side effects of Su Qingmei absorbing the power flared up. Xiao Ran casually tossed out a hovercraft. The two of them boarded, letting the Panther patrol outside. The Panther yawned, bored, and lay down in the snow to sleep. The extreme cold didn't affect it at all. Okay, first, let's tackle the probability of rolling 2 dice and getting a sum of 7. After Su Qingmei dealt with the side effects, the two resumed their search. Half an hour later, they found a second group of espers. And group was the right word because it wasn't just one person, but a full 4 of them. They had taken control of a hotel where a dozen or so reasonably attractive women were kept. And in one of the hotel rooms, bones were piled high, clearly cooked, with bite marks still visible. Evidently, these 4 espers didn't just abduct women for their pleasure. Once they grew tired of them, they'd kill and eat them. Utterly depraved. The truth was, espers were perfectly capable of finding supplies to sustain themselves. Cannibalism should have been a last resort. Yet even now, major stores clearly still had resources. At worst, it just meant venturing a bit farther. But these chose to eat human flesh. Xiao Ran shook his head. So many people appeared refined and gentle on the surface, but in reality, they were nothing more than beasts in human skin. Let's go. Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei entered the hotel. However, Xiao Ran didn't head straight for where the 4 were indulging themselves. Instead, He acted like an explorer who had just stumbled upon the place. Before long, the 4 espers appeared. "Who are you?" one of them asked warily, but a second one immediately chuckled. "No need to be so tense. This godforsaken apocalypse has killed who knows how many. As fellow survivors, we should help each other, stick together for warmth." He spoke pleasantly enough, but his gaze towards Su Qingmei held a veiled, lecherous intent. He was only saying this to lull Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei into a false sense of security. They'd used this tactic to deceive many, striking ruthlessly when their target's guards were down. It was an easy way to eliminate threats, and it never failed. So, the third man chimed in with a smile. "Lao Li, don't be so paranoid. In times like these, people need to stick together. How can you still be suspicious of others?" This was, of course, all for Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei's benefit. See? We're good people. If you're still wary of us, shouldn't you be ashamed of yourselves?" The fourth man said nothing, merely offering what seemed to be the smile of an honest, simple man. Then, the first man finally relaxed his guard. All right. My apologies for being overly cautious," he said. "You too, what should we call you? And where are you from?" He subtly sized up Su Qingmei, an unconcealable mix of awe at her beauty and greedy desire in his eyes. This woman is stunning. Not only beautiful, but her figure is incredible too. Her thin clothes did little to hide her full, proud curves. And her aura, it immediately made him think of a female soldier or cop. Otherwise, how could she possess such a dashing, heroic bearing? Fucking a woman like that would be incredible. While he held Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei's attention from the front, the other 3 quietly fanned out, taking positions to encircle them from all sides. "Huh, what's that?" he suddenly exclaimed. Simultaneously, all 4 of them struck. Boom! A direct hit. The 3 attackers were instantly overjoyed, but their elation quickly turned to stunned disbelief. The one hit by the blast wasn't Xiao Ran or Su Qingmei. It was their own comrade. How? How is this possible? Their companion, too, seemed completely bewildered. He had been positioned behind Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei, ready for a sneak attack. His eyes rolled back, and he was dead. The remaining 3 were consumed by a mixture of fury and dread. They looked towards where their comrade had fallen, only to see Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei standing there, unharmed. Xiao Ran had first swapped places with the now-deceased attacker. Then, he'd used a small pebble he carried to swap positions with Su Qingmei. The pebble was so tiny that the 3 attackers hadn't noticed it at all. "You despicable bastards. You actually killed Lao Si. You're going to die for this." All 3 roared, "Avenge Lao Si." Brave words, but in the very next instant, all 3 unexpectedly turned tail and fled. Some ran for the exits, others headed upstairs, scattering in whichever direction offered the quickest escape. Su Qingmei was mildly surprised. "Weren't you all filled with righteous fury just a moment ago? How did you all decide to flee simultaneously the very next second?" It was only natural. After just one exchange, one of their own was dead. If they continued to fight, wouldn't they just be throwing their lives away? Run. They were espers, after all. They could thrive anywhere. Why risk their lives needlessly? Fighting to the death was for fools. Xiao Ran just smiled faintly. He activated his spatial exchange, flicking out small pebbles as he opened spatial gates. Swish, swish, swish. The 3 fleeing espers vanished almost simultaneously. Clink, clink, clink. 3 small pebbles dropped to the ground, making a crisp sound. "Your power is incredible," Su Qingmei remarked, deeply impressed. "It's almost terrifying. I wouldn't even know how to begin to counter it." If she were to face Xiao Ran as an enemy, she confessed she'd have no idea how to even launch an attack. It was true. Xiao Ran's ability was the perfect counter to physical-type espers. Other espers might attack from a distance, but physical types had to engage in close combat. Unless they could launch a surprise attack and get in his face before he had any chance to prepare, they'd be completely shut down by his spatial gates. But Xiao Ran's spatial perception extended over 2,000 meters. Even if a physical type charged him from that distance, it would take them at least a few seconds, wouldn't it? And wasn't that more than enough time for Xiao Ran to open a spatial gate? Moreover, if Xiao Ran simply tossed a pebble and swapped it with a target, how could a physical type, caught in midair, possibly defend against that? No matter how powerful they were, they couldn't just magically fly. Fire attribute espers, for instance, could generate thrust like a rocket. Avian beast form espers could spread their wings and fly. Someone like Wei Lily could even extend her limbs to drag herself out of an alternate dimension. But what about physical types? Could they run on air? So, as long as a physical type Esper was within range of his spatial exchange, the moment Xiao Ran casually tossed a stone, their fate was sealed. No matter how tenacious their life force, once trapped in an alternate dimension, survival was measured in mere minutes. Could they really settle down there, eat its food, drink its water, and live there indefinitely? Get within 100 meters of Xiao Ran, and even the most powerful physical type Esper was doomed, even if their absorbed energy was 100 times greater than his. Of course, if a physical type was so overwhelmingly powerful that they could close the distance and snap Xiao Ran's neck before he even had a chance to react, then Xiao Ran would have to accept his fate. Xiao Ran tossed out the 3 Esper's corpses. 3 for you, 1 for me, he said. Su Qingmei blinked her large, beautiful eyes. 3 for me. Xiao Ran nodded. The more energy you absorb, the more intense the side effects. I'm curious to see just how intense you can get. And by intense, he definitely wasn't referring to her combat prowess. Su Qingmei was speechless. This guy, he really knows how to push my buttons. But she, too, craved greater power. Besides, he was her man. What was there to be embarrassed about? So, she proceeded to absorb the Esper energy from the 3 corpses. Xiao Ran absorbed 1 as well, though it wasn't much, only about 3 units of energy. That meant Su Qingmei had likely absorbed around 9 units. Xiao Ran brought out the hovercraft, and once again, the 2 of them tumbled through clouds and rain. The leopard lay sprawled lazily on the ground. Not again, the leopard thought. Master's basically a dog too, isn't he? A poodle, maybe? Truth be told, survivors are hard to find. It's been over 80 days since the apocalypse began. Who hasn't learned to be cautious by now? Everyone's long since mastered self-preservation. Anyone else, no matter how powerful, would have to search room by room. Sweeping an entire residential complex would take a considerable amount of time. Besides, survivors aren't fools. If they sense someone approaching, they'd definitely hide. Who trusts anyone easily these days? But Xiao Ran was different. Whenever he passed by, a sweep of his spatial perception covered an area of over 2 kilometers around him. Every detail, no matter how small, was within his grasp. No matter where you hid, you couldn't escape his notice. You could say it was even more effective than a Sky Eye surveillance system. After all, even a Sky Eye has to respect privacy, right? It can't be installed right inside your home. Even so, after a full day of searching, Xiao Ran had only found 3 groups of ability users. None of them were good people, and he, Su Qingmei, and Baozi easily wiped them out. Yes, Baozi had joined the fight. Even before evolving, Baozi was exceptionally fierce. Naturally, it hadn't become timid after evolving. When its ability activated, its entire body became encased in thick stone. Coupled with immense strength, it was only slightly inferior to Su Qingmei, and its combat power was not to be underestimated. Since Baozi didn't suffer any side effects from absorbing abilities, Xiao Ran wasn't stingy and let Baozi absorb the power of one of the ability users. Su Qingmei had now absorbed nearly 14 portions of abilities, making her arguably the top expert among the women. But Xiao Ran wouldn't favor one over the others. In the future, he planned to take different girls out with him each day, allowing each of them to grow stronger. Combat aside, abilities could also be quite stimulating in the bedroom. Wonderfully so, in fact. Of course, this also enhanced the women's chances of survival. What if ability users came knocking after he left someday? The mansion did have plenty of weapons, but as ability users grew stronger, firearms would become less and less effective. So, he still needed to arm and strengthen the women, lest their nest be raided unexpectedly. Anyway, he was only letting Su Qingmei and the others absorb the powers of small fry. If it were Sister Qin, hith. When it was about time, Xiao Ran and Su Qingmei returned to the mansion. The 2 of them and the dog returned to the mansion. For the others, a day's absence felt like 3 autumns. There was naturally another round of affectionate whispers and sweet nothings. After the initial excitement died down, Xiao Ran poured himself a Coke and, ignoring the biting cold, sat down on the balcony. The room temperature Coke instantly turned into an ice-cold one. He took a gulp, a refreshing chill spreading through him. Satisfying. Xiao Ran smiled, then began to ponder his plans for the next day. Where to go? Should he continue searching like today? The gains have been minimal. A few portions of abilities here and there. Xiao Ran didn't really care for such meager pickings anymore. Though he knew that many a little makes a mickle. Wasn't there a fat sheep at New World? Chin Sui's ability energy should be astounding. This woman appeared generous. The moment Xiao Ran arrived there, She had presented him with two significant gifts, Chung Qian's head and a clean beauty. However, this did nothing to change the fact that she was ruthless and had a heart of a viper. I'm trying to sound her out, and she's likely doing the same, wanting to know the number and specific power of my abilities. Even if she saw footage of my fight with Wei Lily and the others through a retracer, I absorbed a massive amount of abilities after that battle. Not only did my power surge, but I also gained new ones. She definitely wouldn't let her guard down. Once this woman figures out my true strength, it's highly probable she'll turn on me. And what's the deal with Pu Suxin? I really can't understand how an ordinary person could manage to influence or even control me. Is she simply trying to curry favor to dismantle my hostility? Impossible, impossible. That woman is definitely not that simple. Moreover, I still haven't figured out how she creates ability users. Tomorrow, I'll go to her place again. I need to see when the next so-called awakening ceremony begins, and then keep a close watch. With my spatial perception, if I witness it just once, I can uncover its secrets. I have a feeling this secret might be incredibly significant. Time for bed. He placed a cup on the table. In just that short while, the remaining Coke had frozen solid. The night passed, and a new day arrived. Day 86 of the apocalypse. Everyone woke up, had breakfast, and then Xiao Ran set off. Today he brought little green tea with him. When Zhou Yunsu found out Xiao Ran was taking her out, she immediately went to pick out clothes. She changed into an ethereal, flowing dress. As an ice ability user, the severe cold was no longer a threat to her. In fact, she felt right at home in it. Brother, let's go. Xiao Ran smiled, picked up little green tea, and leaped onto Baozi. With a gentle pat on Baozi's head, the creature immediately shot forward. It galloped as fast as the wind, no slower than a car. The crucial difference was that a car needed a driver and couldn't navigate this kind of terrain. Baozi, on the other hand, wasn't as heavy and could make its own judgments. Just point in a direction, and it would run there on its own. Before long, the two of them arrived at New World. They went straight in. Although he wore goggles, Baozi was too conspicuous. The guards recognized him immediately and respectfully invited him in. Xiao Ran let Baozi go off and roam on its own, while he entered with Zhou Yunsu. Soon after, Pu Suxin found them. Mr. Xiao. She had just started to speak when she saw Zhou Yunsu, and an astonished look appeared on her face. This woman was simply too beautiful, and she had come from the outside, yet she was only wearing a white dress, making her look like a white lotus flower, so beautiful and pure. Her looks, her figure. Pu Suxin felt utterly inferior. She had originally mustered all her courage, determined that today, no matter what, even if she had to beg, she would get Xiao Ran to sleep with her. Otherwise, if she fell into Liu Kang's hands, she might as well kill herself. Actually, she had been quite confident in herself, but after seeing Zhou Yunsu, that confidence began to crumble. Zhou Yunsu glanced at her. How could she not know what this suddenly dejected pretty girl was thinking? She immediately broke into a charming smile, looped her arm through Xiao Ran's, and said, "Big sister, do you need my husband for something?" Calling her big sister, talk about a stab to the heart. And no, nothing. Pu Suxin said, her face pale. I'm here on Sister Qin's orders to be Mr. Zhao's guide. Oh, is that so? Zhou Yunsu giggled, still smiling sweetly. I thought big sister here had taken a fancy to my husband and wanted to seduce him. But seeing how pure you look, big sister, you don't seem like one of those slutty seductresses at all. Wasn't that a direct slap in the face? Pu Suxin's pretty face turned even paler, but she didn't dare to argue back, only nodding awkwardly. Yes, yes. Oh, no. She didn't even know whether to agree or disagree anymore. Xiao Ran had no interest in Pu Suxin to begin with, so naturally, he didn't mind Zhou Yunsu deliberately cornering her. He smiled and said, well then, show us around again today. Oh, okay. Pu Suxin nodded dazedly and began to lead Xiao Ran and Zhou Yunsu around. As time went on, she grew increasingly panicked. If she couldn't get Xiao Ran to sleep with her today, Sister Qin would hand her over to Liu Kang. No, absolutely not. Suddenly, she turned around and knelt before Xiao Ran. What in the world is going on? Xiao Ran didn't help her up, asking coolly, what do you want? Pu Suxin bit her lip and said, Mr. Xiao, can you take me? Take what? Zhou Yunsu feigned surprise. Don't speak in riddles. Pu Suxin, though so embarrassed she wished the ground would swallow her whole, gritted her teeth and said, I'm begging Mr. Xiao to have relations with me. You're so shameless. Seriously, even if you're lonely and desperate, you can't just steal someone else's husband, can you? There are plenty of men here. You can pick anyone. Why fixate on my husband? These words made Pu Suxin's face turn deathly pale. She burst into tears, because if Mr. Xiao doesn't sleep with me, Sister Qin will give me to Lu Kong. That man is a pervert. Women who fall into his hands are either toyed with until they die or are left crippled. None of them have a good ending. Oh, look at you trying to guilt-trip us? Zhou Yunsu showed no sympathy. That's your problem. What does it have to do with us? So, if anyone makes such a request, we have to satisfy them. My husband would be drained dry by all of you. Besides, if every ugly hag came knocking with such a request, wouldn't my husband be disgusted to death? Pu Suxin was stunned. She hadn't expected Zhou Yunsu, another woman, to be so devoid of sympathy. She could only look at Xiao Ran with a glimmer of hope. But would Xiao Ran soften? If this woman hadn't been sent by Chin Sui, he might have just taken the bait and turned the tables on them. But since Sister Qin sent her and even ordered Pu Suxin to sleep with him, there had to be a conspiracy. Xiao Ran didn't know the specifics, maybe some kind of hidden poison. But why should he risk it? Risk myself to help you? Who even are you? Don't think for a second I'm some kind of good guy. Xiao Ran felt a chill inwardly, but asked, Who is Lu Kong? Lu Kong is Sister Qin's most capable assistant, and he was the number 2 here. No, he should be considered number 3 now, Pu Suxin said, correcting herself after a thought. Tell me more. Xiao Ran's interest was piqued. How could the number 2 suddenly become number 3? Yesterday, Sister Qin went out and brought back someone named Duan Chong. Sister Qin values him highly. Lu Kong was resentful and kept provoking Duan Chong. Eventually, Duan Chong couldn't take it anymore and fought Lu Kong. Just one punch, and Lu Kong was sent flying. He lay on the ground, unable to get up for a long time. As she spoke of this, Pu Suxin actually seemed a bit animated, but then she shivered immediately. Lu Kong lost face publicly. He must be furious now. If I fall into his hands, I'll die a horrible death. Zhou Yunsu giggled, pinching Pu Suxin's chin. Then let me teach you a way out. Go back to your room, find a rope, and hang yourself. Once you're dead, you won't feel anything, so naturally, there'll be no pain. Pu Suxin trembled. How can you have no sympathy at all? Oh dear, guilt-tripping again. Zhou Yunsu said bitchily. What do we have to do with you? You ran into trouble yourself, but you want unrelated people to solve it for you. I say, lady, are you really that thick-skinned? Or just completely lacking in self-awareness? Pu Suxin said no more, but her body trembled even more violently. Lu Kong was a powder keg right now. If Sister Qin handed her over to him, she would definitely be toyed with until she died. Xiao Ran paid her no mind, instead looking for this Duan Chong. However, aside from Sister Qin, the second strongest was still that physical type ability user, though he had a clear fist mark on his face. It seemed he was Lu Kong. Duan Chong wasn't here, though. Where had he gone? Xiao Ran suddenly became very interested in this Duan Chong, but since the man wasn't present, he could only focus on other matters for now. He asked Pu Suxin, How long have you been here? Pu Suxin, though scared and disappointed, didn't dare offend Xiao Ran and quickly replied, 13 days. Only 13 days. Xiao Ran was a bit disappointed. He asked again, Do you know any old-timers here? Preferably someone who's been here since this place was established. Pu Suxin thought for a moment. I only know one person surnamed Ma. He was already here when we arrived. Take us to him, Xiao Ran said. Oh. Pu Suxin found Xiao Ran's request strange, but she didn't dare to ask why. They walked for a while before Pu Suxin finally led the two to a basement. A dozen or so men lived there. When they saw Pu Suxin, their eyes lit up. A beauty, and clearly innocent-looking too. Such a rare find. Here, ordinary men couldn't get with women. They had to take care of their needs themselves. So, seeing a beautiful woman was like wolves spotting meat. There's another one. Wow, this one's even more beautiful, and with an indescribable allure. Such a tiny waist, but such large breasts and a perfectly round, pert bottom. When she walks, her waist sways, her hips twist. Heavens, she's too tempting. They had all been repressed for too long. Usually, they could follow the rules here and didn't dare act recklessly, or they'd lose their lives. But seeing such a captivating woman, many of them were gulping, their eyes turning red, and reason was thrown out the window. Let's get her first. Where is he? Xiao Ran asked. Pu Suxin quickly pointed to one of the men. That's him. I have some questions for you, Xiao Ran said to the man. Who the hell are you? The man only had eyes for Zhou Yunsu's sexy, captivating figure and couldn't be bothered with Xiao Ran. Make him cool down a bit, Xiao Ran said, turning his head to Zhou Yunsu. Okay, big brother. Zhou Yunsu swayed her hips as she walked forward. The man surnamed Ma saw her and thought Zhou Yunsu was throwing herself at him. He chuckled lewdly, but a second later, He couldn't laugh anymore. He became very calm. Calm in a physical sense. An ice blade was pressed against his neck. How could he not be cool and calm? An ability user. At this, all the men in the room shuddered. Their lust vanished like a receding tide, and reason instantly regained control. My husband has some questions for you. You'd better answer them properly, or I might accidentally hurt you. Zhou Yunsu said with a grin. The man surnamed Ma nodded hastily, but as he did, the ice blade touched his skin, making him shiver from the cold. Pu Suxin watched, filled with envy. If she were an ability user too, she wouldn't have to worry about Sister Qin sending her to Lu Kang. They were all human, so why was the difference between them so vast? Go ahead and ask, big brother. The mink smiled dazzlingly. Xiao Ran asked, how long have you been here? A month, minus 2 days. The man surnamed Ma replied quickly. Is there anyone who's been here longer than you? Xiao Ran asked again. The man surnamed Ma thought for a moment, then shook his head. I should be one of the oldest timers here. Oh, Xiao Ran smiled. Then what about the people who came here before you? The man surnamed Ma said, killed in action. All of them. Xiao Ran was somewhat surprised. The man surnamed Ma nodded. Yeah, once you go through the awakening ritual and become an esper, although your power increases and your treatment gets better, you also have to go out and find supplies. It's easy to run into other esper factions. As far as I know, a lot of our people have been killed by them. Actually, I could have undergone the awakening ritual a long time ago, but I was afraid that after becoming an esper, I'd be forced to go out for supplies and get killed by that group. So, I withdrew my application and never applied again. Hearing him finish, not only was Xiao Ran stunned, but the others also looked astonished. You're really that scared of dying, huh? Xiao Ran, however, wasn't concerned about whether this man was afraid of death. Instead, he thought about that group of espers specifically targeting Sister Qin's faction. They had been consistently ambushing Sister Qin's espers, causing continuous losses here. The death rate must be incredibly high. Otherwise, it wouldn't have scared this man Ma to the point where he didn't even dare to become an esper. He wasn't unaware that becoming an esper came with privileges, but he'd rather withdraw his application for the awakening ritual. It was clear he was terrified. Even so, there were still over 1,500 espers here. If everyone had survived, how astounding would that number be? When is the next awakening ritual? Xiao Ran asked. Tomorrow night. Xiao Ran nodded at Zhou Yunsu. Little Green Tea understood immediately, retracted her powers, and obediently walked to Xiao Ran's side. Pu Suxin sighed inwardly again. See, that's the difference. Just as Xiao Ran was about to leave, he paused slightly. His spatial perception picked up someone approaching. Interesting. A man, a full one. 9 meters tall, wearing only a tank top, completely unafraid of the severe cold, was walking across the snowfield. He was acting as a hauler, a thick rope slung over his shoulder, the other end tied to a mattress. However, the mattress had clearly been modified. A mattress can be modified? It really can. It had been made into something like a tent, protected on the outside by thick tarpaulin, shielding against the cold wind. That was why the 9 women on the mattress hadn't frozen to death. And behind this mattress, another rope was being dragged, connected to a second mattress. It was also modified, but this one carried 7 men. They were packed tightly, huddling for warmth, and, amazingly, not a single one had frozen. However, apart from this burly hauler, the 9 women and 7 men on the mattresses were all ordinary people. So, one esper was actually dragging 16 ordinary people over here and protecting them so well. Am I looking at some legendary saint? Huh, this man is strong. Xiao Ran's expression immediately turned grim. This man's cellular strength was far above his own. Therefore, if this person wasn't a physical type esper, then the amount of anomalous energy he had absorbed was at least 10 times more than Xiao Ran's. At least, Xiao Ran couldn't judge precisely because he had no reference point. But he estimated that there shouldn't be anyone this formidable in all of Sioux City. So, this man was probably a physical type. But as for what level he was, that was hard to judge because physical types focused on strengthening their bodies, and their cells were inherently much stronger than espers of the same rank. Compared to this man, whether it was the Lu Yong from before or Lu Kang here, they both seemed insignificant, like a firefly to the blazing sun. The gap was too vast to describe. Is this man Duan Chong? Didn't he come over yesterday? Right, he came yesterday to scout the situation. He found this place suitable for living, just as Chin Sui had said. So he went back today to move his people over. If it were only the first mattress, Xiao Ran could understand. But there was another mattress full of men behind it, which was too strange. It can't be that this Duan Chong is trying to save everyone, men and women alike, to to such an extreme? Is he really such an ultimate saint? Xiao Ran disliked having saints around him, but as for strangers, never mind a saint, he wouldn't care even if they were the saint's grandmother. Suddenly, that Duan Chong, it had to be him, stopped abruptly. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes. He dropped the tow rope from his shoulder, assumed an offensive stance, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead. What's going on? Xiao Ran was taken aback. He could see clearly with his spatial perception. There was absolutely no danger around. What's this fuss about? Wait. Xiao Ran suddenly realized that Duan Chong was neither far nor near, just a fraction over 100 meters away. If Duan Chong took one more step, he would be within 100 meters. Is he wary of me? Did Duan Chong's danger sense go off? No. Xiao Ran had only swept the area with his spatial perception, without a hint of killing intent or even hostility, so it shouldn't have triggered an Esper's danger sense. Is this Duan Chong's instinctive reaction? Theoretically, if he took one more step forward, Xiao Ran could use spatial cut, or use spatial swap to pull him over, then open a spatial gate and easily suck him in. Against physical types, that latter move was tried and true. If Duan Chong could truly sense this completely unknown danger, damn, isn't this guy a bit too terrifying? On the snowfield, Duan Chong remained stationary. After a while, a voice came from the mattress. Brother Duan, why have we stopped? Duan Chong mused for a moment, then replied, a small issue, but it's fine now. So, he shouldered the tow rope again and took a step, but not forward. Instead, he moved diagonally. His route was very interesting. It was an arc. And Xiao Ran could see even more, because Duan Chong was moving in a curve with him as the center, always maintaining a distance of over 100 meters. That confirms it. Duan Chong is convinced that approaching within 100 meters of me means danger, so he's been avoiding it. Impressive, truly impressive. Xiao Ran couldn't help but admire him. This Duan Chong had never seen him, didn't even know he existed, yet he could keenly sense unknown danger, even when Xiao Ran showed no hostility or killing intent. Duan Chong took a detour and finally avoided Xiao Ran. He walked to the entrance of New Haven and asked the sentry, did any outsiders come today? The sentry thought for a moment and said, actually yes. Boss Xiao Ran just arrived. Xiao Ran. Duan Chong looked completely blank. The sentry quickly explained, he's a boss whom Sister Chin holds in high regard. He's incredibly strong. Duan Chong nodded slowly. He had the people on the mattresses get down, led them into the hive, and settled them in. Xiao Ran tooted. This Duan Chong had been meticulously avoiding him, never coming within 100 meters. That kind of intuition is scary. Maybe I should mess with him a little. Xiao Ran moved, approaching Duan Chong's direction. Instantly, Duan Chong's expression changed. He retreated hastily. Actually, he wanted to rush towards the entrance, but he was currently on the left side of the hive, while Xiao Ran was approaching from the right. The entrance, which was also the exit, was between them. If he moved towards the entrance, it would mean actively stepping into Xiao Ran's 100-meter range. He could only retreat. He retreated, Xiao Ran advanced. Soon, Duan Chong was pushed to the far left end of the hive, with nowhere left to retreat. Duan Chong, there was nowhere left to retreat. Now what will you do? Xiao Ran smiled faintly and took another step forward. Duan Chong made a stunning move. He suddenly spun around and slammed a fist against the wall. BM, even though this was a solid layer of subterranean earth and rock, merely decorated a bit to look less shabby, his punch blasted out a crater over a meter in diameter and half a meter deep. Then, he continued punching, and the crater grew deeper and deeper, rapidly turning into a tunnel. Duan Chong scrambled through the hole he'd created and burst out. He kept pummeling his way, forging a passage right through the earth, angling upwards. In less than a minute, whoosh, the snowy plains suddenly ruptured, and a figure shot out. It was Duan Chong. What a terrifying guy, punching his way out from 200 meters underground. What a beast. Duan Chong was also panting heavily. The short burst of exertion had consumed a massive amount of his energy. Fortunately, he had escaped the confined space. Trying to kill a physical-type Esper like him in such an open area would be next to impossible. Meanwhile, everyone in the entire hive was dumbfounded. Those who hadn't seen it were fine, merely hearing the continuous heavy thuds without knowing what was happening. But those who witnessed the scene, their jaws practically hit the floor. One had to admit, Duan Chong was inhumanly strong. He'd been nearly 200 meters underground just moments ago, yet he'd managed to punch a tunnel to the surface with his bare fists in under a minute. It sounded utterly incredible, something no ordinary person would believe. But what in the world was he thinking? What was wrong with this place? How had it offended him so much that he had to destroy it? Was he just showing off for no reason? On the snowy plains, Duan Chong's face was dark and extremely grim. He knew Xiao Ran must be targeting him. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for Xiao Ran to advance every time he retreated, always maintaining a distance of about 100 meters. But why? First, he had never met Xiao Ran before. There was no grudge or enmity between them. So why would Xiao Ran target him? Second, they were a full 100 meters apart, with who knows how many earthen walls between them. So how did Xiao Ran know his position and keep pressing him, putting him under such pressure? Xiao Ran, however, had stopped, clicking his tongue in admiration. Duan Chong was truly no ordinary powerhouse. His explosive power was terrifying. For such an expert to be recruited by Chin Sui and become her second in command. Xiao Ran even frowned slightly. Don't be fooled by how he just cornered Duan Chong without making a single move, seemingly holding all the cards while Duan Chong was too weak to even fight back. The explosive power of a physical-type esper was too immense. If Duan Chong were given an opening, even Xiao Ran could be instantly killed if his reaction was a fraction too slow. Of course, if they were within 100 meters and Xiao Ran managed to lock onto him, then even the strongest physical-type esper would face certain death. Looks like this could be fun. Xiao Ran decisively departed. He still wanted to find that esper faction opposing Sister Chin. Logically, if Sister Chin's side had lost so many espers, the other side couldn't possibly be completely unscathed, right? Yet they were still antagonizing her. Why was that? A personal vendetta, perhaps? He felt there was something fishy going on. Find this faction, capture their leader, and a quick interrogation would reveal everything. He took Zhou Yunsu and left. As for Piao Suxin, not worth his attention. What did she have to do with him? Xiao Ran summoned Baozi, and the large dog once again carried the two of them across the vast snowy plains. After they left, Duan Chong frowned and walked back through the tunnel he had dug. By then, Chin Sui had received a report from her subordinates and rushed over, arriving just in time to see Duan Chong emerge. She couldn't help but ask, "What happened to you?" She didn't directly ask if he'd gone mad, naturally giving Duan Chong some face. Duan Chong pondered for a moment, then said, "That Xiao Ran is extremely dangerous. He made me feel the threat of death." Chin Sui found it hard to believe. It wasn't like she hadn't interacted with Xiao Ran before, but she had never felt any sense of crisis. "Did you have a conflict with Xiao Ran?" Duan Chong shook his head. "That's the terrifying part. He was very far from me, with numerous earthen walls between us. But even so, he made my heart pound with fear. I had to retreat all the way here, until I had nowhere left to go and was forced to punch a way out to escape. I have a feeling that if he got close enough to me, I would undoubtedly die." Chin Sui felt a chill run down her spine. Duan Chong wouldn't joke about something like this. But Duan Chong was already incredibly strong. To be able to instill such a sense of crisis in him from behind so many walls, without them even seeing each other, just how powerful was Xiao Ran? She had already estimated Xiao Ran's strength to be very high, but it seemed she had still underestimated him. Just how formidable had this Xiao Ran become? Xiao Ran refused to believe that with his spatial awareness, he still couldn't find the group opposing Sister Chin. But reality slapped him in the face. Baozi's speed combined with Xiao Ran's spatial awareness should have been enough to search most of Wujiang district in 2 days. The only unscanned areas were the mountains and farmlands, where the likelihood of an esper faction existing was extremely low. By nightfall, Xiao Ran finally had Baozi head back. It didn't matter if Baozi couldn't see the road. He could, guiding Baozi all the way. It took them over an hour to return to Qingfeng Garden. Xiao Ran drew a hot bath. As he soaked in the warm water, he began to ponder. Was that faction really in Wujiang? Xiao Ran believed that for survival, they would have to be in a city. Cities had various shopping malls, abundant supplies, and the low temperatures would help preserve things. But if they went to the countryside, would they resort to digging up and eating radishes from the frozen ground? Besides, the snow was now 6 or 7 meters deep. Just digging through that much snow would consume a lot of energy, possibly more than the vegetables they might find could replenish. Even though this faction ambushed Sister Chin in Wujiang, it doesn't mean they have to be based in Wujiang. That would explain why Chin Sui and her people couldn't find them. If they're not in Wujiang at all, how could you possibly locate them? Then the search area becomes much wider. How can I find them? There's a way. I can't find this group directly, but since they've been consistently ambushing Chin Sui's subordinates, I could just keep an eye on them. But tomorrow, I should first go observe that bullshit awakening ceremony. Maybe I can find some clues there. The long night passed. Though long is relative. If you're asleep, it's over in a blink. But if you're wide awake, a night like that can feel endless. Why couldn't Xiao Ran sleep? A certain siren was demanding his essence, and he couldn't very well refuse, so sleep was out of the question. Still, Xiao Ran managed a little sleep, truly just a little, less than 2 hours. Yet, he woke up feeling refreshed and invigorated, the perks of an enhanced physique. Time to go. After some thought, Xiao Ran brought Han Yun along. So, it was the two of them and a dog, heading towards a new world. Wyvern girl. It was like telling Chin Sui, look, I'm not here to pick a fight, just to take a look around. Tonight, Chin Sui was holding an awakening ceremony at her place. Xiao Ran was very interested. How exactly did this awakening work? He could also help people evolve, but his method required the target to first be infected by the toxic hailstones and wait a full 10 days before he could intervene. However, he'd observed that no one in the New World's hive was running a fever. That was strange. It meant Chin Sui's methods were completely different from his. Besides, the superhumans she created didn't seem to have any powers he could absorb, which was another oddity. Bowsy, let's go. Bowsy let out a howl and shot off on all fours. This time, Bowsy ran even faster. He knew the way well, so there was no worry about getting lost or having an accident. After a little over 10 minutes, they arrived at the New World. Again, Bowsy was let off to roam freely, while a sentry immediately informed Chin Sui. Before long, the graceful, voluptuous, and proud Sister Chin appeared before Xiao Ran. She seemed particularly fond of Chong Sam's, generously displaying her beautiful and alluring figure. She was indeed very alluring. Her subordinates were naturally well-behaved in her presence, but when they stood behind her, their gazes looked like they wanted to tear her clothes off. My boss Xiao, if you like it here so much, why don't you just move in? Sister Chin said, covering her mouth with a chuckle. Her laughter made her delicate frame tremble, her assets nearly bouncing free. The men around, even in such harsh cold, couldn't help but flush. Luckily, they were wearing thick clothes, preventing any unsightly displays, but their gazes towards Chin Sui burned with even more desire. Xiao Ran, however, remained indifferent. He saw even more exquisite women daily, TSK, some who offered ice and fire, some who were vixen-like, others whose bodies could stretch and contort. He'd seen it all. Such minor temptations naturally didn't faze him. All right then, I'll stay here tonight, he said, going along with it. Chin Sui was taken aback. She hadn't expected Xiao Ran to be so thick-skinned and actually take her up on the offer so brazenly. But the words were already out, and she couldn't go back on them. Besides, she was highly confident that Xiao Ran wouldn't be able to glean any useful information. Welcome, welcome. Boss Xiao, please make yourself at home, she said with a smile. Chin Sui didn't stay with Xiao Ran any longer and returned to her own room. On the way, she couldn't help but frown. Duan Chong had said he sensed danger whenever he got within a certain distance of Xiao Ran, but she felt nothing at all. Had her danger sense failed? Impossible. She'd had her subordinates try aiming guns at her, and she still got a faint sensation. Even though bullets posed little threat to her, small as it was, the warning was still there. So, why did only Duan Chong sense it? An illusion? No, Duan Chong was very strong. She had personally sparred with him, so she believed he wouldn't just be crying wolf. That was truly strange. Why? She couldn't figure it out. When she returned, however, Duan Chong was nowhere to be found. After asking her subordinates, she learned he had run off again. Apparently, with Xiao Ran's arrival, Duan Chong's sense of crisis had returned, making him too scared to let Xiao Ran get close. However, Duan Chong had also said yesterday that if they were to face off in an open field, he was confident he could close in on Xiao Ran in an instant and snap his neck, giving him no chance to use his abilities. Chin Sui firmly believed this. The explosive power of a physical-type superhuman was beyond doubt. But in her hive-like base, unfortunately, Duan Chong's abilities were severely restricted, forcing him to flee and hide. Chin Sui shook her head, but Duan Chong's honest, simple face involuntarily appeared in her mind. His tall, physical-type frame, the unparalleled explosive feel of his muscles. A blush inevitably crept onto her cheeks. She was somewhat moved. These days, the private lives of superhumans were bound to be messy. It couldn't be helped. Absorbing powers always came with side effects, and even if you were a couple, your partner might not always be around. Chin Sui, naturally, wasn't one to remain chaste, though she didn't have that kind of addiction either, nor did she keep a stable of male consorts in her chambers. Power was the only thing on her mind. But Duan Chong was different. He truly was an honest, simple man. He had indeed absorbed many powers, but he hadn't sought out the women he protected. Instead, he took care of it himself. She had confirmed this with the women Duan Chong protected. Mind you, those women would have loved for Duan Chong to take them. With his simple nature, they could easily control him and achieve their own ambitions in an instant. This made Chin Sui even more interested. On one hand, she greatly valued Duan Chong's strength. On the other, her world-weary heart, which had seen countless men, was actually stirring. If it were Xiao Ran, the stronger he was, the more wary she would be. Forget romantic feelings. She'd stay as far away as possible. But Duan Chong was different. He was a lovable oaf, adorably simple. Thinking of how Duan Chong had draped his coat over her and how he'd blushed to the tips of his ears when she accidentally touched him, that genuine embarrassment, a smile couldn't help but grace her lips. No time to waste. I'm going to devour him, she thought, even finding excuses for herself. With that oaf's personality, she reasoned, if I just slip him something and make him violate me, he'll feel incredibly guilty afterwards and will only think about how to compensate me. And with my looks and skills in bed, once he gets the taste, he definitely won't be able to leave me. Thinking of Duan Chong's explosive physique, her face flushed and her breathing became a little ragged. Tonight. No, not tonight. Xiao Ran is here. Tomorrow night, I'll conquer this lovable oaf. Chapter 1. Park Su-shin didn't show up today. Xiao Ran only realized it after a moment and remembered what she said yesterday. Could she already have been handed over to Lu Kong by Chin Sui? He didn't really care much about a woman, especially not one who was so obviously a honey trap sent his way, except this one didn't even bother with the honey part. With a sweep of his spatial awareness, Xiao Ran easily located Park Su-shin. She hadn't been given a Lu Kong after all. She'd been locked up. Was it because Duan Chong showed up? Lu Kong no longer mattered enough to deserve a clean and pretty little girl as a reward. Possibly. Now Xiao Ran found himself curious about this Duan Chong. Activating his spatial perception again, he quickly located the group of men and women Duan Chong had brought yesterday and went to see them. He made no effort to hide his ability and even pulled out a whole bag of frozen steaks. In an instant, the group completely sold Duan Chong out. From the way they talked, Duan Chong sounded like a living saint. They had only met him 7 days ago. Before that, they'd been trapped inside a commercial complex, barely surviving, running low on food. Just when things looked hopeless, Duan Chong appeared like a divine savior. He had arrived alone, with nothing on him, but after learning about their plight, he immediately went out and found food for them. He even stayed with them, continuing to scavenge for supplies, promising he wouldn't leave until he found them a safe place to settle. When hostile ability users attacked, Duan Chong tried peaceful negotiation first. Only when they struck first did he fight back. Some he killed, but others he spared, giving them a chance to turn over a new leaf. In short, this guy wasn't just a saint. He was some post-apocalyptic messiah. But after he killed those ability users, didn't he suffer the side effects? Xiao Ran voiced a key question. There were side effects, a woman said, clearly annoyed. Brother Duan handled them, alone in his room. What the? Xiao Ran's mouth twitched. Okay, forget saint. This guy's a damn ascetic monk. But seriously, how did someone like that even survive in a place like this? Why wasn't he killed back when he was still weak? Xiao Ran asked around some more. Turned out, Duan Chong really didn't have any hidden motives. Meanwhile, the group of 16 clung to him tightly, constantly probing for his background. And Duan Chong? He spilled everything without hesitation. Before the apocalypse, Duan Chong had been in the military, special forces, no less. He'd only retired a year ago. In simple terms, he was a one-man army who could take on a dozen regular people barehanded. Although he'd been betrayed early on and nearly froze to death, he awakened his ability by chance and never lost faith in humanity. Instead, he made it his mission to help others. He came from Kuan City and never stayed in one place. He helped people as he traveled. Joining the New World settlement was just a temporary stop to find a safe haven for these 16 people. Once they were settled, he planned to move on. Too many people still needed his help. Click. TSK. Even Han Yun was impressed. It's so rare to find someone like that these days. Yeah, the others all nodded in agreement. Some people truly shine from the inside out, forcing others to respect and admire them. But Xiao Ran, after all he had experienced with his ex-wife's family's betrayal, had long since stopped trusting anyone. Could someone like Duan Chong really exist? He doubted it. Something in Duan Chong's story didn't sit right with him. He just couldn't pinpoint what was off, yet he left with Han Yun. There were still hours to go before nightfall. Looking at the mature and alluring woman beside him, Xiao Ran grinned mischievously. Teacher Han, how about we play a game? No. Han Yin turned him down without hesitation. Whenever he called her teacher, it meant he was up to no good. At home, fine, he could do whatever he wanted, but this was someone else's territory, with who knew how many people living here. If she lost control and started screaming, "Where's my husband?" in the heat of passion, how was she supposed to show her face afterward? The shame would be unbearable. Still, how long could her weak willpower hold out under Xiao Ran's practiced touch? Even if Xiao Ran often acted like a clown, he kept his spatial awareness constantly active. With his current energy levels, he could maintain the ability indefinitely. It regenerated faster than it was being consumed. Only when he switched to the enhanced version, which worked at the cellular level, did it drain him fast. Given that he was in enemy territory, he kept it running constantly. Chin Sui, however, showed no sign of making a move against him. At least not yet. Night quietly fell. Xiao Ran and Han Yin didn't go out. They stayed inside and had dinner. Then he noticed a large crowd heading toward the largest chamber in the hive. That room was truly massive, about 30 meters high and roughly spherical, with a diameter of 50 meters. Huge. Whoever excavated it had real skill. Not only had they carved out such a vast space, but they'd also reinforced it so it wouldn't collapse. The awakening ceremony was about to begin. Xiao Ran could see everything from where he was, but since they'd said guests could observe, he figured he'd play along. He took Han Yin with him and entered the enormous chamber. There were no electric lights. Only torches lit the space, lending a strong ritualistic atmosphere. Everyone present wore black and white robes, looking for all the world like some sort of cult. Xiao Ran watched quietly from the sidelines, and Han Yin did the same. The ritual progressed with absolute devotion. The participants marched in circles around the chamber for a full 30 minutes. Only then did Chin Sui appear, and the ceremony reached its climax. Everyone began humming an eerie, wordless tune that echoed through the space. Somehow, it even felt sacred. At the end, 50 chosen individuals stepped into the center of the chamber. Chin Sui then brought out the holy meal for them to consume, supposedly the key to awakening. When Xiao Ran saw it, the corner of his mouth twitched. It was steamed buns, not even filled buns, just plain ones. Eat this and awaken? You gotta be kidding me. Still, Xiao Ran kept his spatial awareness active, monitoring every detail. There were no sleight-of-hand tricks, nothing hidden, so the secret was in the buns themselves. Xiao Ran activated his enhanced spatial sense, focusing on the steamed buns. Under heightened perception, every detail of the steamed buns became vividly clear. All Xiao Ran could say was that they were plain white buns, no filling inside. But what should be in a steamed bun? Xiao Ran didn't really know. So if something had been mixed into the dough, he wouldn't have been able to tell at all. He shifted his focus to the 50 people in front of him. Each of them lifted their bun high, as if in a gesture of gratitude, before eagerly biting into it, their faces filled with emotion. In no time, they had all finished eating. Only 10 minutes later, their bodies began to tremble, and one after another, they collapsed to the ground. But strangely, the people around them showed no panic at all. Instead, they raised their arms and cheered loudly. It's starting already? Seriously? Xiao Ran saw it clearly. In the minds of those 50 people, energy seeds were rapidly forming. No external force was aiding them, yet the seeds coalesced without a single failure, then shattered, nourishing their entire bodies. It was as effortless as drinking a glass of water. Just like that, the 50 individuals climbed to their feet again and began displaying their powers: flames, ice arrows, magnetic manipulation. Suddenly, the whole hideout was bursting with excitement. Xiao Ran was stunned. It actually worked. Gaining superpowers, is this easy? And with a 100% success rate? Unbelievable. And the key to it all was a plain steamed bun? Who would believe that? Where did those buns come from? Xiao Ran wondered. If I could figure out the ingredients used to make them, maybe everything would become clear. But Chin Sui probably suspects I have the ability to see through walls. Would she really make more of those buns while I'm around? Should I monitor the area nearby? That's the only way. There wasn't anything more to observe at the moment. So, Xiao Ran brought Han Yun back to Qing Feng Garden. Leopard had returned before the mist appeared. The night he kidnapped Lu Qi in the thick fog from over 100 meters away had already revealed part of his abilities, so Xiao Ran didn't mind exposing more this time. After Xiao Ran left, Chin Sui, though more certain now of his ability to see within the mist, quickly set that worry aside. With him gone, her plan could begin ahead of schedule. Time to find Duan Chong. Now that Xiao Ran was out of the picture, Duan Chong naturally returned. Chin Sui swayed her voluptuous hips as she made her way to his room. Showing up in a man's room in the middle of the night. What would people think? Duan Chong, despite being a 6'3" hulk of a man, blushed like a shy schoolboy. He was honestly kind of adorable. How could a man like this even exist? I couldn't sleep. Share a drink with me, Chin Sui said with a charming smile. No way, it's way too late. Let's drink tomorrow, Duan Chong protested. If you don't drink with me, I'm not leaving, she pouted, shamelessly digging in. Duan Chong had no choice but to let her sit down. Chin Sui poured them each a glass. They raised their cups, clinked them together. She sipped lightly, while he downed his in one go, typical brute behavior. Bold, Chin Sui praised, topping off his glass again. One glass after another, Duan Chong didn't refuse. He already had a high tolerance, and after becoming an ability user, his resistance to toxins had increased significantly. 1 bottle? No problem. 10 bottles? Still nothing to him. But as the drinks kept coming, he started feeling off, hot, restless, filled with a powerful urge. Leave. Now, he barked, suddenly realizing what was happening. He wasn't dumb. After absorbing so many abilities, how could he not recognize this kind of reaction? What's wrong? Chin Sui asked innocently, reaching out to touch his forehead. Wow, you're burning up. Duan Chong tried to hold back, but with such a seductive woman leaning in close, his self-control completely collapsed. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. What are you doing? Let go. Stop, Chin Sui said, but her words lacked any real resistance. She didn't struggle at all, and what followed quickly spiraled out of control. Another night passed. Xiao Ran had already set out early, taking Jiang Yuning with him. Before long, they arrived at a location about 1 kilometer outside of New World. The base of New World was built underground in a wide open space, but that didn't mean the surroundings were empty. Quite the opposite. Buildings of various sizes surrounded it. Xiao Ran didn't pick a tall one, but settled into a single-story structure instead. He pulled the police officer girl into his lap and cuddled with her while keeping his spatial perception focused on Chin Sui's territory. Today, something unusual happened. A team of 43 people emerged on sleds, heading off into the distance. A resource-gathering mission. Xiao Ran quickly followed. Holding Jiang Yuning close, he leapt on a leopard's back. The massive beast tailed the team from afar. With Xiao Ran's spatial sense, there was no fear of losing them unless they got more than 2 kilometers away. An hour later, the team reached a commercial complex. They had passed by other similar sites on the way, but clearly, those had been cleaned out already. Xiao Ran had confirmed it with his perception. These people knew it too, not stopping once until they arrived at this specific spot. Even here, most of the supplies had already been taken. It was obvious they'd been here before, so they moved with practiced ease, heading straight for their target. Soon, the 40-some members began hauling supplies. Gotta give it to Chin Sui, she really didn't hold back. She actually used ability users as manual labor. Then again, it made sense. Could normal people survive out in this freezing weather? Maybe for 1 kilometer, but beyond that, they'd be collecting corpses instead of supplies. Xiao Ran and Jiang Yuning waited quietly from the sidelines. Maybe the group that had been targeting Chin Sui wouldn't show up. Or maybe they'd appear at any moment. Who could say? All they could do was wait. Suddenly, Xiao Ran tensed. Someone had entered his sensory range. It was a woman, you could tell by her build. She wore goggles and a hat, not a strand of hair exposed. Her face was completely obscured, but that didn't matter. Xiao Ran focused, sharpening his spatial perception. Instantly, the goggles, hat, and even her clothes seemed to dissolve before him, revealing everything down to her facial features and full body proportions. What the hell? He blinked. It was Chin Sui. No, wait, it wasn't her. This woman looked exactly like Chin Sui, but something was different. Xiao Ran couldn't see through Chin Sui's body. It was like a black hole to his senses. But this woman? He could see everything. And what he saw terrified him. Her body was filled with thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of strange entities, all dormant, yet radiating a silent, horrifying pressure. He had never seen anything like this before. Xiao Ran's expression instantly darkened. Incredibly bizarre. This masked person wasn't Chin Sui, but she was definitely Chin Sui's sister, a twin, no less. Otherwise, such a resemblance would be impossible. Cloning? Forget about it. Chin Sui clearly had a twin sister, so why weren't they together? Could it be this person was the mysterious sniper? They weren't a group at all, just one person. But why? Had the sisters turned against each other? Or is there some other conspiracy afoot? What a headache. Xiao Ran reached over and rubbed Officer Jiang. She was also quite well endowed, he noted, feeling some stress ease. Jiang Yuning. She shot him a glare. Forget it. I'm not going to overthink this. I'll just take her down. Xiao Ran thought. But he didn't act immediately, choosing instead to observe. What was this person here for? Was she truly Chin Sui's long-standing adversary? Only it wasn't a group, but a single individual. Just then, the mysterious person appeared before the 43 men. Startled by the unexpected guest, the group tensed up. But when they saw it was just one person, and a woman with a killer figure at that, lecherous expressions spread across their faces. 43 superhumans. And you think we can't handle one of you? Hey, little lady, take off your hat and goggles. Let's have a look. I haven't had any meat in days. I'm going to enjoy myself tonight. Who hasn't? In a new world, ordinary superhumans couldn't just throw their weight around. Unless a woman came onto them willingly, they were strictly forbidden from using force, Sister Chin's orders. But they were just low-tier superhumans. Even if beautiful women were to throw themselves at someone, it wouldn't be them. Out here, however, they didn't have to follow Sister Chin's rules. A woman? Look at that tiny waist and that perky large ass, so plump and round, truly mouth-watering. The woman ignored them, simply pointing a finger. A bizarre scene unfolded. Streams of black miasma shot out from her fingertip, twisting together to form a giant figure, a full 6 meters tall. It had no facial features, merely a humanoid shape condensed from the black miasma. This miasmic figure swayed, lacking any sense of solidity, but the sight was chilling enough to make the 43 men shudder slightly. Little lady, why bother? Yeah, wouldn't it be better if we all just had some fun together? Get her. Take her down. Try not to hurt her. Even if you do, don't hit her face or chest. The ass is off limits too. The crowd surged forward, completely oblivious to how terrifying this woman was. Xiao Ran, however, shook his head. These 43 individuals had likely all gained their powers through an awakening ceremony, as their cells were only slightly stronger than an ordinary person's. But the mysterious woman? Strong. Very strong. And, critically, exceedingly bizarre. The woman pointed again, and the black giant instantly drifted forward at great speed. It lunged at one man, who naturally fought back, activating his powers. But he could neither harm the miasmic figure nor stop its advance. The miasmic figure passed right through the man's body. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed dead. This scene stunned everyone, sending chills down their spines. But the miasmic figure had already launched another attack. It was too fast. 1, 2, 3. It swiftly and silently passed through person after person. Anyone it touched died instantly. Utterly horrifying. Xiao Ran tooted, observing both the woman and the miasmic figure. A portion of the countless foreign entities within the woman's body had vanished. They had appeared within the miasmic figure. What kind of power was this, and why was it so strange? Xiao Ran focused on a man about to be attacked by the miasmic figure. As the dark entity entered his body, his cells instantly lost all vitality, and he died on the spot. A killing machine? Xiao Ran thought to himself. This woman's ability is truly astounding. Meanwhile, the miasmic figure continued its slaughter. No attack could harm it. No defense could stop its approach or its ability to phase through things. How could they fight such an enemy? Attack the woman. Right, if we kill her, this power will definitely deactivate. Kill. The remaining 30 or so men charged towards the woman together. Their powers were diverse. 3 of them were even physical-type superhumans, rushing at her from 3 different directions at speeds far exceeding a 100-meter sprint champion. This naturally made them much harder to block. Yet, the woman showed no intention of defending herself, simply standing motionless. Was she suicidal? The 3 physical types reached her. This time, there was no thought of going easy on her. Their fists and feet aimed for vital spots. This woman was too terrifying. She had to be eliminated immediately. However, their punches and kicks passed right through her body, as if the woman wasn't solid at all, just like the miasmic figure. Xiao Ran let out a soft, huh, because just before the attacks landed, the woman's physical state had changed. It was as if she had shifted from a tangible form to a virtual one. Yes, like she wasn't a real person, but merely a holographic projection. The 3 physical types, their attacks hitting nothing, were about to press on when their eyes rolled back. They crumpled to the ground, motionless. Instant death. Incredible. Xiao Ran thought. Just then, attacks like fireballs and ice arrows finally reached her, but they all passed through her body without causing a shred of damage. What do we do? Run. The remaining men had lost all will to fight. Such an opponent was too terrifying. What else could they do but flee? However, the miasmic figure relentlessly pursued them. 1, 2, 3. It quickly dispatched more than 20 of them. Only 7 were still escaping, having managed to create some distance. One of them, in particular, was a beast form type who transformed into a bird. With a beat of his wings, he flew faster than anyone. The woman, unhurried, mimed drawing a bow. Bizarrely, an arrowhead formed of black miasma materialized. Swoosh! Her first target was the birdman in the sky. The black arrow flew as fast as a bullet. Swoosh! It caught up to him, passing straight through his body. Though the birdman had no visible wounds, his eyes rolled white, and he plummeted from the sky. After firing the arrow, the woman didn't spare him a second glance, immediately drawing her bow again. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. She fired 6 more arrows. Not a single scream was heard. All 6 arrows hit their targets. The last 6 men collapsed silently to the ground. The woman moved from corpse to corpse, from the nearest to the furthest, operating on each one. She took out a knife and first mangled the bodies. Then, with a grasping motion of her right hand in the air, wisps of a thread-like substance floated out from the corpses, eventually gathering in her palm and coalescing into a single drop of liquid that faintly shimmered with a golden hue. Xiao Ran raised an eyebrow. Huh, so these manufactured superhumans can't have their powers directly absorbed? They have to be extracted this way? But can that drop of golden liquid really enhance supernatural energy? The woman refined all the corpses, extracting a drop of pale golden liquid from each one, 43 drops in total. She consumed half immediately and stored the rest. She was about to leave. Attack now, or follow her to her lair and then strike? Xiao Ran considered for a moment, then made his decision. Strike. Actually, a lair wasn't that important to an Esper. Even if he knew her location, so what? Wait for me here, Xiao Ran said to Jiang Yuning. Spatial swap. Swoosh. He rapidly closed the distance with the woman. 500 meters. 300 meters. 100 meters. The woman whipped her head around, looking towards Xiao Ran. Face to face. Although the woman wore goggles, making it hard to see her features clearly, Xiao Ran had spatial perception. He immediately sensed the woman's face was filled with shock, as if to say, how could this person be here? Xiao Ran slowed to a walk, stopping 10 meters in front of the woman, and smiled faintly. It seems Chin Sui told you what I look like. Perhaps you even saw it with your own eyes, through that retracer. The woman's body trembled again. Suddenly, she giggled coquettishly. Boss Xiao, you're truly amazing, and you must have a lot of time on your hands to be watching and following these people. Her tone was very much like Chin Sui's seductive charm. Xiao Ran remained unmoved. Are you the older sister or the younger one? He asked. He didn't ask if she and Chin Sui were twins, but stated it assertively, preventing her from evading the point. Sure enough, the woman frowned slightly. Your spatial ability is truly terrifying. I'm dressed like this, yet you can still see my face. Hiss, does that mean you can see my body too? You pervert, you're so bad. It seemed like a flirtatious pout, but she was actually seeking confirmation. Xiao Ran was nonchalant. Nice rose tattoo. Don't get another one next time. The two sisters had identical tattoos in the same spot. This time, the woman was genuinely taken aback. Xiao Ran could indeed see through things. She did indeed have a rose tattoo. And where was it? On her butt. My name is Chin Sujuan. The younger sister, she giggled, having already composed herself and regained her captivating allure. She also removed her goggles, revealing a face identical to Chin Sui's. Can you answer a few questions? Xiao Ran asked. Of course. Chin Sujuan simpered. But for every question I answer, you have to give me a kiss. Xiao Ran's expression stiffened. She's actually hitting on me? No good. Chin Sujuan shook her head, feigning disappointment. All right then, I'll answer one of your questions, and you answer one of mine. That's fairer. How about it? Fine. Xiao Ran nodded. He knew what Chin Sujuan was thinking. I'll answer your questions, sure. My real goal is to extract your secrets. As for my secrets being revealed, no problem. I'll just silence you afterward. Coincidentally, Xiao Ran was thinking the exact same thing. Experts like them could easily detect minute changes in facial expressions, even the slightest pupil dilation or shifts in breathing. So, concocting believable lies during a Q&A was extremely difficult and easily exposed. Well then, you asked first. You were the one who suggested it, after all. Chin Sujuan adopted the air of a gentle older sister, and combined with her captivating charm, it was truly alluring. Xiao Ran thought for a moment. What was that substance you extracted from the corpses earlier? Qin Sujuan's face instantly changed, showing intense alarm. From so far away, you could still see so clearly? No, wait, there were several walls between us. That means your X-ray vision is terrifyingly powerful. Was there any privacy in front of Xiao Ran? But after the shock, she smiled seductively again. In that case, I might as well take off my clothes. You've already seen everything anyway. Xiao Ran made a go-ahead gesture. Oh, you bad boy. Qin Sujuan laughed so hard her body swayed enchantingly. She wasn't wearing much, and as she laughed, her ample bosom jiggled, dazzling the eyes and making one's blood pressure rise. In fact, although her face was identical to Chin Sui's, there were some differences in their figures. Her chest was clearly a size larger, but was a bit smaller. She was obviously well aware of her assets and was clearly flaunting her bust. But Xiao Ran remained impassive, his gaze unwavering. Qin Sujuan's heart tightened. This man is so cold. Good heavens, don't tell me you're incapable. Otherwise, any man seeing such a sight would be breathing heavily, his eyes glazed over. What she didn't know was that Xiao Ran wasn't incapable, nor was he averse to beautiful women. He had simply seen too many top-tier beauties. Besides, considering her power, he figured she was far from inexperienced. How could he be moved by her? Qin Sujuan dropped her smile, became serious, and began to answer. This is my ability. I can extract this substance from their bodies. I call it Esper fluid. As you saw, it can be directly consumed and absorbed to enhance one's Esper abilities. Why not absorb their powers directly? Why go through such a convoluted process? Xiao Ran pressed. Hee, that's the second question. Qin Sujuan winked and threw him a seductive glance. Now it's my turn to ask. Go ahead. Xiao Ran nodded. Do you have 3 billion in supplies? Qin Sujuan asked. No. Xiao Ran's reply was crisp and decisive, without a hint of hesitation. Even a lie detector wouldn't have caught him lying. This wasn't because he was an expert liar, but because the supplies he possessed exceeded 3 billion. So, when Qin Sujuan asked like that, he could truthfully answer no, rather than confirming or denying if he had any. But what did Qin Sujuan revealing the number 3 billion signify? Gao Yang had approached Cheng Qian to form an alliance against Xiao Ran, and over 3 billion in supplies was naturally a crucial bargaining chip, something that would definitely be put on the table when forming an alliance. Otherwise, Cheng Qian wasn't a fool. Why would he make an enemy for no reason? There had to be sufficient benefit. Later, Cheng Qian defected to Chin Sui, and this information must have been presented to her as a greeting gift. If Chin Sui knew, wouldn't her sister also know? Qin Sujuan was momentarily stunned, but then immediately realized there was a flaw in her question, allowing Xiao Ran to exploit a loophole. She wasn't annoyed, merely shot Xiao Ran a look. You a grown man, taking advantage of a little old me. So mean, so mean. She stomped her foot repeatedly, her chest rippling like waves. This woman was very adept at using her advantages. Xiao Ran smiled and asked, those people earlier probably couldn't absorb powers directly, so you had to use a special method to extract the Esper fluid. So, why is that? Well, that question hit the nail right on the head. Qin Sujuan, with a smoky, seductive allure, swayed her hips, her waist moving like a boneless water snake. You're gonna make me reveal everything, down to my underwear. She glanced at Xiao Ran, playfully stuck out her tongue, and winked. Oh, I forgot the gentleman before me has X-ray vision. You already know, I'm not wearing any. Giggle, I didn't mean to lie, you know. What a seductress. She was already so alluring and full of charm, and with such risque talk, how many men could resist? But Xiao Ran seemed like a saint across 9 lifetimes, completely unperturbed, his heart as still as water. It doesn't matter. Please answer the question, he said calmly. Qin Sujuan couldn't help but frown. Are you even a man? I'm starting to doubt it. Why don't we go to bed and find out? Xiao Ran just looked at her calmly. Keep stalling and making things up. Caught red-handed, Qin Sujuan didn't blush in the slightest. She just pursed her lips and smiled. All right, I'll tell you. It's related to my ability. I can create these super-powered individuals whose powers you can't absorb. But I, on the other hand, can extract them using a special method, resulting in this power fluid. This was likely true. Xiao Ran indeed couldn't absorb the blood toxin man's powers, and the man was undeniably a super-powered individual. However, this woman definitely hadn't revealed all her secrets. Unfortunately, he had already asked his question. It was Qin Sujuan's turn. The woman thought for a moment. After I kill you, will your supplies disappear, or will they all drop? This seemed like a curious question, but it hid a strong killing intent. If Xiao Ran answered that they would drop, she would probably attack him the next moment. And if not, then it was unknown whether she would capture Xiao Ran alive and force him to hand over his supplies, or kill him outright to eliminate the threat. Xiao Ran didn't hesitate for a second, shaking his head. I don't know. He genuinely didn't. Was he supposed to slit his own throat to find out? Chin Sujuan giggled, a large amount of black miasma swirling around her fingertips, quickly forming a 6-meter-tall humanoid figure. Xiao Ran sighed and shrugged. Weren't we having such a pleasant chat? Don't be in such a hurry to turn hostile and attack. I still wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with you. Talk in bed? You're welcome. Sitting down? Unnecessary. Chin Sujuan was still smiling like a seductive flower, but her expression instantly turned fierce, and the humanoid black miasma whistled as it flew toward Xiao Ran. It was very fast, at least 100 meters per second. The speed of sound is only 340 meters per second. Xiao Ran, however, was incredibly calm. Just as the humanoid black miasma was about to touch him, it abruptly stopped. Chin Sujuan frowned, looking somewhat hesitant. The humanoid black miasma hadn't been stopped by Xiao Ran. She had stopped it herself, because Xiao Ran was too calm. This guy had clearly seen her slaughter 43 people here. He should have known how terrifying the humanoid black miasma was. So, for him to stand there so calmly was too unreasonable. Was there a deadly trap in front of Xiao Ran? She couldn't help but recall Chin Sui's description of Xiao Ran's abilities. 1. He could suck people into a mysterious space. 2. He could launch extremely fast rebar and stones out of thin air. 3. He could crush people to death. 4. He could bizarrely move people's positions. So, was that mysterious space right in front of the humanoid black miasma? Chin Sujuan's eyes sharpened, and the humanoid black miasma continued forward. Sure enough, the humanoid black miasma vanished into thin air with extreme strangeness. Chin Sujuan couldn't help but click her tongue. Spatial abilities are truly amazing, but she wasn't flustered in the slightest. Black miasma emerged from her fingertips again, reforming into a giant humanoid shape. Can you only release one at a time? Xiao Ran asked curiously. Guess. Chin Sujuan giggled coquettishly, but the next moment she unhesitatingly pointed, and the humanoid black miasma drifted towards Xiao Ran again. Again, she'd already lost one. Did she want to lose another? Xiao Ran didn't think Chin Sujuan was that reckless. This woman might seem to rely on her looks and body, but she was definitely sharp. If anyone thought she was just big-breasted and brainless, they'd be fooled to their deaths and wouldn't even get compensation. With a thought, he activated his supersonic rebar, shooting it towards Chin Sujuan. Chin Sujuan either couldn't dodge, chose not to, or had something to rely on. She didn't move an inch. Swish, swish, swish. 3 supersonic rebars passed through her body, but they quickly began to dissipate. Yes, dissipate. It was as if these 3 rebars had endured millions of years of corrosion, becoming hollowed out with barely anything left. After a few flakes of rust drifted away, the 3 rebars completely ceased to exist. What the hell kind of ability was this? Time-based? No, impossible. How could a time-based ability create other superpowered individuals? Perhaps her body was like a special furnace. Anything passing through it would be refined or disintegrated, just like those 3 martial arts types who had attacked her earlier and died instantly. At this moment, the humanoid black miasma finally arrived, fashionably late. After all, it was moving at less than a third of the speed of sound. Just as the humanoid black miasma was about to repeat its mistake, it suddenly disintegrated, transforming from a single giant into countless black gas clusters. Then, they spread out in all directions from above and below, pouncing on Xiao Ran from every conceivable angle, 360 degrees with no blind spots. Even faster, Xiao Ran shook his head and activated spatial swap. Swoosh! He switched places with Chin Sujuan. Swish, swish, swish. The black gases couldn't stop at all, and all rushed into Chin Sujuan's body. However, while this would be fatal to others, it meant nothing to Chin Sujuan. The black miasma entered her body, and the next moment, it all surged out again. The miasma was fine, and so was she. They were one and the same. Xiao Ran smiled. This was the first time he had encountered a superpowered individual completely immune to physical damage. Wei Lily could only devour, but her devouring had an upper limit that was easily reached. Chin Sujuan, however, could likely maintain this special state for a long time because the amount of power energy she had absorbed was probably a terrifying figure. Since physical damage doesn't work, I'll try something else. Xiao Ran tossed a pebble, then locked onto Chin Sujuan and activated spatial swap. Swoosh! The pebble and Chin Sujuan switched places. Freefall commenced. Chin Sujuan found herself abruptly in another location, her feet off the ground. Surprisingly, she wasn't shocked or terrified but showed a hint of novelty. Then, alarm bells screamed wildly in her mind. Danger! 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 However, in the very next moment, a large amount of black miasma erupted from her body, actually allowing her to float in mid-air. Xiao Ran was speechless. How many days had it been since the apocalypse began? Not even 3 months. Logically, everyone should still be in the early stages of their powers. How come you guys, who shouldn't be able to fly, have all evolved similar abilities? Look, Luo Yafei, the fire user, can float in midair like a hot air balloon. And now Chin Sujuan is using her black miasma to stabilize herself in the air. Huh, is dying really that hard? Xiao Ran sighed, but without hesitation, he activated spatial compression. You won't come willingly? Then I'll invite you. Spatial compression, a 3-pronged encirclement leaving one side open. Bang! Chin Sujuan was instantly propelled downwards as if strapped to a rocket. Spatial compression was indeed a devastating technique, but it could be withstood. Wei Lily, for example, had been flattened like Play-Doh, spread into a thin sheet, yet she stubbornly refused to die. When the ability was finally retracted, she was back on her feet, lively as ever. But try using an alternate dimension? That was a guaranteed kill. With the true ultimate move of an alternate dimension, even spatial compression became a mere support tactic. Whoosh! Before Chin Sujuan could even cry out, she was thrust into the alternate dimension, vanishing into thin air. The moment Chin Sujuan was absorbed into the alternate dimension, the black gas she had released immediately dispersed, as if it had evaporated. Piece of cake, Xiao Ran smiled faintly. Spatial compression paired with a spatial gate, truly awesome. Chin Sujuan was so powerful, so bizarre, but so what? The only real threat to him came from melee-type specialists who could attack at speeds far exceeding sound, insta-killing him before he could react. However, to achieve that currently, they'd probably need to have absorbed 10 times more anomalous power than him. Otherwise, how fast is a thought? Forget opening a spatial gate, which required knowing the opponent's approach vector first. He could just momentarily banish himself. Once a melee type entered his 100-meter range, and he was aware of them, the tables would turn. He could toy with melee types endlessly. In the future, he could even send them directly into outer space. Then, Xiao Ran turned his attention to Chin Sujuan. Although he hadn't managed to interrogate her for the secrets of her powers, like the details and key to creating other powered individuals, it was better to kill such a dangerous enemy. Safety first. His brain was connected to the alternate dimension, his consciousness able to directly see what was inside. But when his consciousness looked, he was stunned. What the hell? What did he see? Chin Sujuan was struggling, her expression pained, like a fish out of water. But even so, she wasn't dead. She was just struggling. Are you immortal? Even Wei Lily wasn't this freakishly resilient. Whatever. I refuse to believe the alternate dimension can't kill you. I'll check tomorrow to see if she's dead. Xiao Ran shifted his focus. He went back to find Jiang Yuning, and the two of them rode the leopard. Since it was still early, Xiao Ran had the leopard take them to the zoo. He'd promised to find a tigress for the leopard. Would a leopard, even like a tiger? Maybe. Otherwise, he'd have to find some female dogs and have them evolve too. The size difference with the leopard would be too great otherwise. It would be a comically mismatched pairing. They arrived at Shangfang Mountain, where there was a zoo. Unfortunately, the animals here had either frozen to death, starved to death, or, broken out of their cages? Xiao Ran saw that a glass wall was shattered. The enclosure inside was empty, with no animal corpses. Then, on a piece of broken glass, he saw the animal information. Black bear? Theoretically, no matter how strong, a black bear couldn't have broken the glass wall to escape, unless it had evolved powers. Going to steal a sacred cassock, are we? Xiao Ran muttered to himself, referencing an old tale. How did the black bear inside escape? Only one possibility. It had evolved and gained anomalous powers. Xiao Ran scanned carefully with his spatial perception, but the black bear wasn't within range. Where did it run off to? Xiao Ran looked down the mountain. Beyond Stone Lake lay a vast expanse of city buildings. Black bears were already large, ferocious beasts. How terrifying would it become after evolving further? Who knew how many people would end up in its stomach? But it wasn't like he could go chasing after a black bear. Aha, an idea. A flash of inspiration struck Xiao Ran. He decided to tell Chin Sui, or more precisely, Duan Chong, about the evolved black bear that had escaped from a zoo. Aren't you such a do-gooder? Go deal with this black bear. He always felt that true do-gooders didn't exist these days, at least not among powered individuals. So, he figured he'd see if reality would prove him wrong. Let's go home. Xiao Ran and Jiang Yuning returned to Qingfeng Garden. On the way, Xiao Ran also found 3 dogs and brought them back. However, he didn't keep them in the main residence, but in the villa next door. He also started the evolution process for these dogs. How many would succeed was all down to luck. Of course, all 3 dogs were female. Xiao Ran simply tossed the leopard into that villa to let it bond with these female dogs in advance. He returned to the main residence and first took a bath to warm himself up, though it wasn't really necessary. In the evening, the family had dinner. Xiao Ran quickly finished eating, then scanned with his consciousness and couldn't help but grimace. That damn Chin Sujuan was actually still struggling. It had been several hours. Are you really immortal? Forget it. I'll check again tomorrow. After dinner, Xiao Ran had all the women change into kipeos. He'd found Chin Sui's chi pao attire quite fetching these past 2 days. In no time, 12 beauties, each with unique charm, stood before him in kipeos. Kipeos truly accentuated the figure. If one's figure was even slightly less than perfect, they couldn't pull it off. It would look terribly unsightly. But with a good figure, a chi pao could perfectly showcase its beauty. The kind of charm, the kind of gentleness, perfectly matched the subtle grace and innate allure of Eastern women. This was a completely different aesthetic from the more overtly voluptuous figures sometimes favored in Western depictions. A wild night passed. Xiao Ran glanced with his consciousness. My God, Chin Sujuan still wasn't dead. Not dead. She'd been locked in the alternate dimension for a whole night, and she actually still hadn't died. Xiao Ran had to admit he was grudgingly impressed. If he entered the alternate dimension, he'd probably die instantly, right? He went far away from the main residence, opened a spatial gate in a dense forest, and tossed Chin Sujuan out. At first, her expression was dazed. When she saw Xiao Ran not far away, she couldn't help but tremble, as if she had seen a devil. She knelt down and started kowtowing to Xiao Ran. Please, I beg you, don't throw me back in there. I'll do anything you say, even if you ask me to kill my own sister. Her face was a mask of utter breakdown. That place was too terrifying. She had clearly been screaming, but no sound had come out. It was a world of absolute dead silence. Many people find noisy environments disruptive when they sleep, and that's true. But if you were in a place of absolute quiet, so quiet there wasn't a single extraneous sound, it wouldn't bring peace and comfort, but intense unease. There have been experiments on this. The alternate dimension was even a step beyond that. Even if you try to make a sound yourself, you couldn't. Absolute dead silence. Just one night, and Chin Sujuan's will had completely shattered. Of course, Xiao Ran wouldn't easily believe her, and he had no intention of taking this woman as a subordinate. Since you're not dead, I might as well interrogate you, he said. How do you create powered individuals? Without a trace of hesitation, Chin Sujuan quickly said, I can split off a part of my soul. By having someone ingest it, it enters their body and triggers their evolution. Once the target becomes an esper, it only takes 10 to 15 days for the soul fragment I implanted to grow to a certain extent, and then it can be harvested. This harvesting referred to extracting that pale golden liquid. When my ability was still relatively weak, Chin Sujuan continued, I could only split off 10 soul fragments at a time, and only once every 3 days. But as I've grown stronger, I can now split off 50 soul fragments at once, and I can do it every day. This was an accelerating process. It was very slow in the initial stages, not only limited by the number of fragments that could be split, but also requiring a wait of about 10 days. But in the middle to late stages, the quantity in each batch would skyrocket, eventually reaching an astonishing level. Xiao Ran grimaced. If such an ability existed overseas, how long would it take for him to encounter it? Absorbing powers from people equivalent to an entire nation's population. How powerful could one become? Please, I'm begging you, don't send me back to that hellish place. Chin Sujuan was in tears. I can help you extract the ability fluid and make you the most powerful person in the whole world. Just don't send me back there. She was truly terrified. Xiao Ran remained unmoved. With a pulse of spatial compression and release, Chin Sujuan was once again thrown into the alternate dimension. I curse you. Chin Sujuan shrieked, her face contorted hideously. Damn it. She truly feared that dead, silent space. However, she was no pushover. She was still plotting her counterattack. She had deliberately offered to help Xiao Ran refine the ability fluid to stir his greed. If she got just one chance, she could kill Xiao Ran. But this guy didn't show a shred of greed. She really didn't want to go back into that dead space. Even if she wouldn't die immediately, she would go mad. Xiao Ran, however, just gave a cold smile. Cooperate with Chin Sujuan? That was like asking a tiger for its hide. This woman's abilities were extremely terrifying. Whether it was her or her dark chi, a single touch meant instant death. If he let his guard down, even for a moment, she could take his life. Why bother? If he wanted to become stronger and absorb abilities, he could just hunt other espers. After clearing out Sioux City, he could go to the neighboring, smaller Koan City. After Koan City, he could go to Haidu, one of the few Tier 1 cities in the country, with a population of over 20 million. How many espers could emerge there? Covet what little Chin Sujuan offered. When you're coveting their interest, they're scheming for your principle. Only by suppressing one's own greed and resisting temptation can one avoid being deceived. I refuse to believe it. If one night doesn't kill you, what about 2 days? 10 days? Xiao Ran thought. He wouldn't let Chin Sujuan out again. So, without food, water, or air, he wanted to see just how many days she could last. This woman had to die. She was too dangerous. Time to pay another visit to New World. Now that he knew the secret of these sisters, there was no reason to hesitate. Time to flip the tables. Xiao Ran didn't bring any of the girls with him, nor did he have the panther transport him. Instead, he went alone. This time, it was about causing chaos and starting a fight. What was the point of bringing girls? Would they just slow him down? Xiao Ran took out his hovercraft and sped towards New World. It didn't take long for him to arrive outside. Because a part of the underground nest had already entered his perception range, he immediately realized that a massacre had just taken place here. Bodies littered the ground, and blood flowed like rivers. Because it was warm underground, unlike on the surface where even if someone's head was severed, the wound would quickly freeze and blood would stop gushing out. Here in the hive, corpses were still gushing blood. Their cause of death was all the same. Their necks were snapped, twisted to face directly backward. Some bodies had already bled dry, while others were still bleeding, indicating the slaughter had just ended or was still ongoing. Which faction had invaded Sister Chin's lair? Xiao Ran pressed forward. More bodies. However, he finally saw living people, and also the murderer at work. Duan Chong. It was actually this honest-looking man with thick brows and large eyes. But looking at him now, Duan Chong no longer had a trace of that simple, honest appearance. Instead, he was filled with a sinister, murderous aura. Moving with the agility of a dragon and the ferocity of a tiger, he moved like a phantom, snapping the necks of everyone he saw. His speed was too fast. Many people didn't even see anything before they died an unjust death. Holy crap, Xiao Ran thought. I knew it. Where would you find a bleeding heart these days, let alone a saint? Duan Chong was a wolf in sheep's clothing. No, this merciless slaughter. He couldn't be described as a mere wolf anymore. He was a demon. What about Chin Sui? Xiao Ran jumped off the hovercraft, casually put it away, and then sprinted forward. More of the underground nest appeared in his mind's eye. Chin Sui found her, but she was already dead, and a headless corpse at that. If Xiao Ran hadn't remembered that, like Chin Sujuan, she had a butterfly tattoo on her buttock, he might not have recognized her as Chin Sui at first glance. Sister Chin was dead. Not only that, her entire faction was collapsing. Who did it? Wasn't the killer still here, continuing the slaughter? Duan Chong. Xiao Ran sucked in a breath. This man had crafted a persona of a simple, honest fellow, and Sister Chin had willingly invited a wolf into her house. One had to understand how terrifying the explosive power of a physical-type esper was. If given even a second to unleash his attacks, he could kill a person over 100 times. Although Xiao Ran didn't know exactly how Duan Chong had killed Chin Sui, Duan Chong hadn't immediately started a fight upon encountering her. Instead, he had deliberately built up his persona and infiltrated this place. This showed that Duan Chong was actually quite wary of Chin Sui. Looked at this way, Chin Sui had died a rather unjust death. So, don't think that just because it's the apocalypse and you have great strength, you can run rampant everywhere. If you encounter someone who plays dirty, won't you still die an incredibly frustrating and stifled death? Speaking of which, how long had Chin Sui been dead? Had Duan Chong's side effects flared up, or had he already resolved them? Xiao Ran's expression turned grim. Stealing my potential powers? Then I'll just collect double. Xiao Ran directly used spatial swap, rapidly closing in on Duan Chong. In the underground nest, a physical-type esper like Duan Chong couldn't unleash his full power. Even if blocked by just 3 or 4 earthen walls, his speed would be greatly restricted. That would be enough for Xiao Ran to activate spatial swap and make Duan Chong either fall or charge into a space portal. He calculated the distance precisely. One moment, he was about 150 meters away from Duan Chong, and the next, he used spatial swap again, shortening the distance to 80 meters. Too close wouldn't do. What if Duan Chong was absurdly strong and smashed through all the walls to reach him in an instant? 80 meters was about right. Duan Chong, time to die. In an instant, every hair on Duan Chong's body stood on end. He immediately abandoned his target and whirled around to flee. Bang, bang, bang. Duan Chong erupted with unparalleled speed and strength, obliterating every earthen wall in his path. And what was even more terrifying, the shattering of a dozen walls produced only a single sound. How fast must he be to make the sound of a dozen walls breaking merge into one? Within his spatial perception, Xiao Ran saw Duan Chong burst out over 70 meters in an instant. Mind you, this was underground, with layers of earth and rock blocking the way. How could he charge that far in an instant? Physical-type espers were truly monstrous when it came to explosive power. No, wait. Duan Chong must have also absorbed Chin Sui's esper ability, so his strength must have skyrocketed. Besides, a physical type's power all comes from their body, and cellular enhancement isn't instantaneous. Give him a few more days, and this Duan Chong might become even stronger. Xiao Ran couldn't help but feel a secret sense of relief. Luckily, he hadn't been too close to Duan Chong. Otherwise, the man wouldn't have fled, but would have charged him, ready for a desperate fight. Covering over 70 meters in a blink, right after Xiao Ran had completed a spatial swap, there would definitely be a moment of lag. Such a delay would be enough for a powerful physical type like Duan Chong to kill him instantly. He couldn't afford to be careless. Absolutely not. Xiao Ran gave chase. This time, he kept a distance of a good 90 meters from Duan Chong, even further than the 80 meters before. He was afraid Duan Chong might be setting a trap. What if the guy actually had the ability to close an 80 or 90 meter gap in an instant? If Xiao Ran let his guard down, he could be annihilated in a single blow. Never underestimate a physical type. Their explosive power was too terrifying. As if sensing something, Duan Chong desperately smashed through walls, charging onward. Bang, bang, bang. He had already retreated to the edge of the honeycomb. So, just like last time, he continued to break through the layers of earth and rock, heading upwards. However, this time was different from the last. Last time, Xiao Ran hadn't harbored any killing intent. He was merely curious, toying with Duan Chong. But this time, he was serious about killing him. Duan Chong had to die. Therefore, his pursuit was much faster. Spatial swap, still closing the distance to about 90 meters. What would Duan Chong do now? He wasn't facing a dozen or so earthen walls, most of which were hollow, making them relatively easy to break through. Now, it was all solid layers of earth and rock. How much harder would it be to punch through that? It wasn't that he couldn't break through, but he couldn't possibly do it in an instant. What to do? He let out a furious roar. A thick, bloody aura erupted from his entire body. He seemed to swell a size, his arms becoming as thick as an ordinary person's thighs. His explosive power increased tenfold. Bang, bang, bang. His fists rained down like a storm. In the blink of an eye, he had forcibly punched his way to the surface, emerging onto the snowy plains. At this, Duan Chong finally let out a sigh of relief, his composure returning. There were no more obstacles to hinder his speed. Xiao Ran had strange abilities that could kill him instantly, but wasn't Duan Chong's own explosive power just as capable? Whoosh! Xiao Ran's figure flickered, appearing a good 200 meters away from Duan Chong. This was open ground. Xiao Ran, too, was wary of the terrifying burst power of a physical type. Xiao Ran, Duan Chong shouted. His voice, though carrying over 200 meters, was robust and reached Xiao Ran's ears clearly. The only one who could threaten him without even appearing was Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. I am Xiao Ran. Duan Chong, we finally meet. Duan Chong stared at him. Despite the 200-meter distance, his senses were many times sharper than an ordinary person's. The distance had no effect. He could see Xiao Ran very clearly. He suddenly grinned. I didn't expect you to catch up so quickly. He hadn't managed to silence everyone in the honeycomb yet. There were still some espers there, and espers could definitely travel far in this weather. It was naturally possible they could expose his identity, making it difficult for him to maintain his fabricated persona and deceive people in the future. Xiao Ran also chuckled. I didn't expect someone who looks so earnest, with those thick brows and big eyes, to be so vicious at heart. He tooted. Even someone as old and cunning as Chin Sui had fallen for Duan Chong's act. You're quite the actor. Faced with Xiao Ran's mockery, Duan Chong remained completely unfazed. Xiao Ran was deliberately trying to provoke him. Both of them possessed the ability to kill their opponent in a single strike, so any slight carelessness could mean death. Besides, being insulted didn't cost him anything, so he naturally remained unruffled. Xiao Ran, are you perhaps interested in Chin Sui? He was no pushover himself, and was also trying to provoke Xiao Ran. Sorry to tell you, but I slept with that woman the night before last, and she was the one who threw herself at me. Can you believe it? She thought I was a virgin and actually tried to drug me. Ha ha, that's hilarious. Do you know how hard it was for me to hold back my laughter? But that woman tasted pretty damn good. He paused, looking at Xiao Ran, whose face was beginning to turn ashen. Want me to tell you the details? She's already dead. Her body's gone cold. You can't even have a go while she's warm, so you'll just have to listen to me tell it. Of course, Xiao Ran was deliberately letting his expression darken, making Duan Chong think he cared about Chin Sui. Then, by feigning rage and loss of composure, the guy would likely attack on his own. He had already opened a spatial gate in front of himself, placing him in an absolutely invincible position. So, when Duan Chong charged close, realized the immense danger ahead, and skidded to a halt, that transition from full charge to stop, then to turning to flee, even for a physical type like Duan Chong, would take at least a few tenths of a second, right? That sliver of time would be enough for him to lock on and execute a spatial swap. A physical type like you, once your feet leave the ground, you're like a dead crab completely at his mercy. This was the difference between Esper abilities. Duan Chong began to speak. Don't let Chin Sui's age, over 30, fool you. TSK. She kept her body in really good shape. Her skin was so smooth and tender, and her breasts. He rambled on, describing all the details of their night together. He emphasized how thoroughly he had satisfied Chin Sui, even embellishing the story by dragging Xiao Ran into it, claiming Chin Sui had cried out Xiao Ran's name a few times when she lost control. This almost made Xiao Ran laugh out loud. Chin Sui was incredibly wary of him. If she thought of him in bed, it would be anything but a turn-on. She'd more likely break out in a cold sweat instantly, all arousal gone. Just like Duan Chong himself. If he were in the middle of enjoying himself, and suddenly realized Xiao Ran was approaching, wouldn't he immediately turn tail and run, not even bothering to pull up his pants? Definitely. However, despite holding back his laughter, the anger on Xiao Ran's face grew increasingly intense, as if about to erupt. Come on, attack me. The moment you step within 100 meters of me, I'll send you on your way. Duan Chong, however, just stared at Xiao Ran. Suddenly, a smile spread across his face. You almost had me fooled. Xiao Ran, I might have lied about my profession. I'm no veteran, but I have studied micro-expressions. You're trying hard to look angry, but you're not. Your performance is way off. Even from 200 meters, I can see you clearly. I can even hear your heartbeat. Ha, it's not pounding like someone in a furious rage. You son of... Xiao Ran was speechless. How could a big one, 9-meter tall guy like you be so damn cunning? TSK. Whoever called him a simple brute, I'd be the first to disagree. Xiao Ran chuckled. It's a real shame you're not an actor. Ha ha. Duan Chong roared with laughter, yet hesitation flickered in his eyes. Attack or retreat? Truth be told, Xiao Ran was strong enough for Duan Chong to sense the threat of death. But that also meant Xiao Ran was a prime target. Kill him, absorb his powers, and he would undoubtedly grow significantly stronger. With powerful figures emerging everywhere, taking out one more big shot could help him stand out. It was a snowballing advantage. If he could become the strongest Esper on Earth, even kill all other Espers and reign supreme, how far could his body be enhanced? He already felt his vitality surging. Immune to all illnesses, his lifespan greatly extended. What if he became 100 times, 10,000 times stronger? Could he rival gods? Even surpass them? He was filled with ambition, and ambition meant greed, making him unwilling to back down even in the face of danger. Besides, he did possess the ability to kill Xiao Ran. It all depended on who could seize the opportunity. Their fight wouldn't be a drawn-out affair. No exchanging dozens or hundreds of blows, not even a hint of flashiness. Either he'd be killed silently by Xiao Ran's mysterious methods, where he'd smash Xiao Ran's head in with a single punch. So simple, so direct, so brutal. Duan Chong wasn't ready to give up. If he missed this chance, when would he encounter Xiao Ran again? And what if Xiao Ran's abilities continued to grow? Could he kill him from a kilometer, or even 10 kilometers away? Physical-type abilities involved physical attacks, their strength linear and predictable. But Xiao Ran's abilities were more like magic, utterly unpredictable. No, he had to try again. Duan Chong decided to continue his verbal assault on Xiao Ran, to make him truly lose control. Whether it was anger, sorrow, or something else, as long as his emotions spiraled, there would be an opening. And all he needed was a tiny flaw. He composed himself and said leisurely, "You went to college, didn't you?" "Went to college. And had my share of college girls, too," Xiao Ran smirked. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, I hear college students are all idealistic rebels," Duan Chong said, still unhurried. Xiao Ran played along. 4 years of undergrad. 1, I wasn't smart enough. 2, I didn't have money. So no grad school. Duan Chong wanted to kill him. And wasn't the feeling mutual? So they were both playing dirty, each trying to make the other slip up or take the bait. Their battle would end in a single move. A nostalgic look appeared on Duan Chong's face. College was great. Back then, I pursued an upper-class woman. Took me over half a year to win her over. Then, one day, I stumbled upon her working at a massage place in a hotel. I was so pissed I couldn't eat properly for 3 days. Huh, what's a college student like you doing hanging around hotel spas? You know, saint yourself. Xiao Ran mocked inwardly, but his expression remained calm. What did this have to do with him? That incident made me realize the importance of money, Duan Chong continued. So, after graduating, I went to Haidu. With my eloquence and abilities, I quickly established myself at a high-tech company. Just then, someone approached me. They wanted me to find a way to steal company research data for them, offering a generous reward in return. I thought about it for 3 days and agreed. Damn it, you're a traitorous bastard after all. Xiao Ran didn't hold back and curse aloud. Duan Chong, however, gestured for him to be patient. That person came to me many more times. I took a lot of money and sold out a ton of company secrets. And the funny thing, I knew the company would realize there was a mole and start an internal investigation. So, each time I stole secrets, I planted a load of evidence on a colleague. That colleague was usually quiet at work, a real loner. And me? Completely different, sunny, outgoing, seemingly honest, and down-to-earth. Who would ever suspect me? So, not only was that honest guy fired, he was also locked up, sentenced to 10 years. TSK. I even visited him several times. He told me his wife divorced him, and that in the whole company, I was the only one who believed him and came to see him. You know, seeing him move to tears, how badly did I want to burst out laughing? Ha ha ha! Duan Chong roared with laughter. He felt not a shred of remorse for this past deed. On the contrary, he was immensely proud of it, considering it a triumph. What a disgusting lowlife. You really are a piece of work, Xiao Ran said coldly, genuinely angered now. But part of it was an act for Duan Chong's benefit. Come on, make your move. Duan Chong felt no shame at all. He'd only brought this up to provoke Xiao Ran. In his eyes, it was one of his life's proudest achievements. One of them, seeing Xiao Ran genuinely angry. But not quite enough, he chuckled and continued. Later, my company quickly went bankrupt and was acquired by another. And guess what? The acquiring company, was the very one that had me steal the secrets. I wasn't laid off. Instead, I was given an important position. I even wooed and married a director's daughter just 2 years ago. And that's when I took up citizenship in that little Japan. What? Xiao Ran's eyebrow shot up. He stared at Duan Chong, murder flashing in his eyes. That's right. Duan Chong was even more pleased. This is the anger I wanted. When someone's truly enraged, their reason vanishes. That company is Japanese. Huh? Do you think I'm a traitor to my country? Damn right, I am a traitor. But so what if I'm a traitor? As long as I have money and power, what does it matter? Besides, didn't I still get to have my way with those cherry blossom girls? I even have a Japanese name now. Toda Kazuo. Toda is my wife's family name. To be a traitor and so damn proud of it. This man is an animal. I bet your dad regrets not shooting you onto a wall, Xiao Ran said icily. Remembering the blood feud with Little Japan is every Huaxia descendant's factory setting. Defective products excluded. That's right. When I got married, my parents didn't even show up. They even disowned me, Duan Chong said nonchalantly. So what? I'm the one enjoying all this wealth and luxury. Remember that senior student I mentioned before? After I got rich, I made her my mistress. Huh. Do women even need to be chased? Haha. Isn't it frustrating? Why hasn't heaven struck down someone like me? Wrong. People like me are the ones who thrive in this world. After the cataclysm, not only did I survive, but I even gained powers. My wife and son haven't suffered a bit. They feast on rich food every day. Haha. I've also had my way with all the women in my neighborhood. I don't care if they're someone's wife or daughter. As long as they're pretty, I take them all. Xiao Ran finally exploded with rage. You're a goddamn animal. His hands clenched into fists, trembling slightly. His anger was off the charts. This was the moment. Duan Chong's eyes glinted sharply. Boom! A bloody mist erupted from every pore of his body. His heart rate shot up to at least 300 beats per minute, adrenaline flooding his system. An ordinary person would have died instantly, but he merely entered an even more powerful burst state. Xiao Ran was truly enraged, furious to the point of losing control. He lunged forward. Despite being over 200 meters away from Xiao Ran, in his current explosive state, Duan Chong could cover the distance in just 20 milliseconds. What did 20 milliseconds even mean? Although he couldn't sustain such a super burst for more than a few seconds, how long did he need right now? 20 milliseconds was all it took to finish his opponent. A bountiful harvest was within his grasp. Like a flash of lightning, he charged toward Xiao Ran. Everything seemed to shift into slow motion. No, it was as if time itself had frozen. He had already covered half the distance. Yet Xiao Ran showed no reaction at all, his pupils not even beginning to contract. Because Xiao Ran hadn't even registered that Duan Chong's body had vanished from its original spot, leaving only an afterimage. 60 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. A cruel smile spread across Duan Chong's face. He had deliberately revealed his heinous deeds precisely for this moment. However, an incredibly strong premonition suddenly struck him. Extreme danger. He would die. How could this be? Duan Chong couldn't believe it. They had been in a standoff for so long. Xiao Ran couldn't possibly have maintained his defenses the entire time. Wouldn't that consume his powers? If I hadn't attacked and just dragged this out for half a day, would you have any power left? You would have been finished without me even needing to lift a finger. But the sense of crisis was undeniable. Though he couldn't see any visible danger ahead, Duan Chong chose to trust his intuition. Bang! He stomped hard, forcefully wrenching his body in a different direction and continuing his mad dash. He didn't dare stop, lest Xiao Ran get a chance to lock onto him. From a straight run to a sharp turn, it was essentially a 90-degree pivot. Turning was, of course, faster than coming to a dead stop and then retreating, but unfortunately, even that took time. A cold smile touched Xiao Ran's lips. You took the bait. A pebble was tossed out, and Xiao Ran activated spatial swap. Whoosh! Duan Chong suddenly appeared 2 meters up in the air. With nothing to push off from, even if he possessed the strength of 1,000,000,000 tons, it would be useless. However, Duan Chong was still desperately trying to save himself. Danger warnings flashed wildly in his mind. With a roar, he clapped his hands together, and a powerful gust of wind erupted, actually managing to slow his descent. Truly worthy of a powerful physical-type esper, Xiao Ran mused. Clapping his hands to generate such a strong blast of wind with so much force? Maybe for future wind tunnel experiments, we can just hire physical types to act as blowers. Xiao Ran, let's talk this out. We can discuss anything. Duan Chong screamed in terror, his efforts merely a desperate struggle to prolong his inevitable doom. Xiao Ran smiled faintly and activated spatial compression. Bang! Duan Chong, completely unable to control his body, was propelled towards the spatial gate. Utterly uncontrollable. Whoosh! Duan Chong vanished. Xiao Ran closed the spatial gate and let out a long sigh of relief. Done. Once inside the alternate dimension, it meant the dust had settled. He could finally relax. Xiao Ran composed himself and started heading back. A sweep with his spatial sense revealed about 300 people still in the underground hive, but they were mostly ordinary individuals. He couldn't be bothered with them and returned directly to Qingfeng Garden. After absorbing Duan Chong's powers, the side effects might be incredibly intense. Forget about those women from New World. Better hurry back. It only took Xiao Ran 10 minutes to get back to Qingfeng Garden. His current physical stamina was at least equivalent to that of 100 physical-type espers. For a mere 20-kilometer distance, 10 minutes was actually considered slow for him. Huh, you're back so early today. The women were all a bit surprised. It wasn't even lunchtime yet. Xiao Ran grinned and said, go get ready. Your husband is about to unleash a big move. He checked the alternate dimension with his consciousness. Sujuan was still struggling. Though she looked to be in immense pain, she stubbornly hadn't died. Duan Chong, however, was different. He was no longer breathing. Of course, there was no air for him to breathe in the alternate dimension anyway. Yet his heart was somehow still beating, albeit slower and slower. As expected of a physical-type Esper, his life force was tenacious, but it paled in comparison to Chin Sujuan's. Another half an hour passed, and Duan Chong's heartbeat stopped completely. His life force instantly dropped to 0. Even his brainwaves were gone, completely and utterly dead. Xiao Ran, still uneasy, waited for another full hour. During this time, Su Qingmei and some of the other women came by several times to check on the situation, but he brushed them off each time, saying soon, soon. Duan Chong remained motionless. He must be truly dead. Xiao Ran tossed Duan Chong's body out and immediately activated spatial swap, sending it flying into the air where it had no leverage. Then, using spatial compression, he crushed it. Bang! Duan Chong was reduced to a bloody mist. Definitely dead. Otherwise, with Duan Chong's terrifying strength, he probably could have withstood the pressure of spatial compression. The man relied on his physical power, after all, and if their energy levels were comparable, or if Duan Chong's was even higher, how could Xiao Ran have overpowered him in terms of sheer strength? Now, though, he was smithereens, couldn't be deader. Phew! Xiao Ran had no time to think. The sensation of a new ability budding within him was incredibly strong, but an even more intense feeling overshadowed it, a burning lust. He had absorbed too much power, and the side effects were fiercely potent. The yellow river surges, wave upon wave. Xiao Ran, having ridden his own tide, felt completely refreshed and invigorated. He checked his existing abilities, but none had undergone any fundamental changes. For instance, Spacegate showed absolutely no alteration. Spatial cut and compression had only received a boost in raw power, with no change in their effective range. Banishment, which was inherently unrelated to power level, also saw no change in its range. Only its duration had increased. The changes to spatial exchange were even less obvious. Its maximum exchange distance remained 100 meters, though he estimated the number of times he could use it had skyrocketed to over 500. Still, that was astonishing enough. A new ability had been born. What is this? With a mere thought from Xiao Ran, an invisible cage unfurled, spherical, with a radius of just over 10 meters. This was different from the dimension of banishment. Su Qingmei and the other women could move in and out of it without feeling any effect whatsoever. It also wasn't like Spacegate, which required an absolutely clear path for its passage. This deployed cage could completely overlap with the real world. What use could it have? Xiao Ran focused on a television set within the cage. With another thought, the TV instantly disassembled into countless components. It wasn't violently shattered, but neatly broken down into its individual, normal parts. He focused his mind again, and all the parts seamlessly reassembled. The power connected, the screen lit up, and it even started playing a movie from a USB drive. Coincidentally, this was no ordinary film. The distinct sounds of moans and groans immediately drew the attention of all the women, who turned to stare. Haven't you had enough? You have us, perfectly exquisite women, and you're still watching this kind of adult movie? Look at her. How can her looks or figure even compare to ours in the slightest? Xiao Ran didn't explain, merely smiled. Then, he raised his right hand, and all the women suddenly floated upwards. Just like that, they were suspended in the air, as if completely unaffected by gravity. This left them all stunned. You've gained a new ability? Su Qingmei, ever the quickest, was the first to ask. Xiao Ran nodded. Banishment could also make people float, but only if the target was already airborne. For instance, if they jumped, he could use banishment, and, as long as he maintained it, the target would remain suspended. However, once suspended, they couldn't move because banishment hurled the target into another dimension, rendering them unable to attack, but also immune to harm. This new ability was completely different. Within this cage, Xiao Ran felt like an omnipotent god, capable of controlling everything. He could make people or objects within it completely defy gravity and float freely. He could also compress targets, subjecting them to terrifying pressure, or dismantle them, just as he had done with the television, and not just into components, but down to the cellular level. He couldn't reach the molecular or atomic level yet, but he was confident that if he absorbed a massive amount of additional power, manipulating things at the atomic level wouldn't be a problem. Does that mean I could potentially create a nuclear bomb with my bare hands? Xiao Ran muttered to himself. This ability was just too ridiculously powerful. It takes effect within a three-dimensional space. Isn't this just like the domains you read about in fantasy novels? Then let's call it that. Domain. My spatial domain. He maintained the domain, but after just a little over 10 minutes, he began to feel the strain. The power consumption was immense, forcing him to deactivate it. Fortunately, while his current power reserves had significantly increased, his recovery speed had also skyrocketed. 6 hours later, his power was fully restored. Time to cut loose again. Xiao Ran opened a map and studied it. In Sioux City's main urban district, he no longer had any rivals. The 5 major factions were annihilated, and Sister Qin's forces had been crushed by Duan Chong. He had, in a way, profited from their conflict, but the ultimate outcome was that not even a moderately large ability user faction remained within Sioux City. This feeling of having no opponents, of being free to act without restraint, felt truly wonderful. But Xiao Ran glanced up at the sky. The sun still hung high, and in near-Earth orbit, invisible to his naked eye, countless satellites streaked past, monitoring everything happening on the planet below. Could his battle with Duan Chong have been captured by one of them? Could he now be on the radar of some unknown individual or faction? Could he truly afford to become complacent, satisfied with his current dominance in Sioux City? Setting aside others, Duan Chong alone was a stark wake-up call. From what Duan Chong had implied, he probably wasn't even the strongest in High City. Yet, before he managed to ambush Chin Sui, his power level was likely already on par with Xiao Ran's current strength. And even at that level, he wasn't top dog in High City. Otherwise, why would Duan Chong have bothered coming all the way to Sioux City? The scene for ability users in High City was probably just too cutthroat. He could no longer gain any significant advantages there, forcing him to seek opportunities in neighboring cities. And look, he had managed to snatch up a juicy prize like Chin Sui. If Xiao Ran had intervened, Duan Chong would have feasted to his heart's content from this venture, possibly even amassing enough power to return to High City and establish himself as a dominant force. Perhaps I should take a trip to High City. Xiao Ran figured that even if he wasn't invincible in Ocean City right now, self-preservation wouldn't be an issue. To go or not to go, he decided not to dwell on it. Even if he wanted to, it was too soon. He'd at least have to wait for the 14 women from Qinghong Tower and Leopard's 3 wives to evolve. That would take several more days. So he'd wait. Xiao Ran didn't stay idle. For the next few days, he took one of the women out to search for energy sources. If they came across supplies, he wouldn't miss them either. Useful or not, he'd collect everything first. Gathering fuel was incredibly easy for him now. What was the maximum range of his spatial sense? 5,255 meters. Over 5 kilometers. Such a vast area, above ground, below ground. Even if walls or lead plates were in the way, he could ignore them. They couldn't affect his observation at all. If one day it could encompass the entire world, wouldn't he be able to watch people's private moments all the time? How thrilling. No, how disgusting. Thankfully, his spatial sense didn't have to be active at its maximum range. That was just the upper limit. Xiao Ran could easily set it to 4 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers as he pleased. This ability allowed Xiao Ran to find gas stations, commercial complexes, and convenience stores dozens of blocks away, even if they were covered in snow. When collecting fuel, he could locate a fuel tank from a great distance, then directly activate spatial swap. The oil inside would be swapped with, say, a toss pebble. Then he'd open his spatial portal underneath, and the oil, due to free fall, would be easily absorbed. However, supplies in convenience stores and supermarkets weren't as easy to collect. He had to do it manually because spatial swap could only take 1 item at a time. Even if Xiao Ran could use it over 500 times a day now, that still meant only 500-odd items. That was barely anything. So, he resorted to the old method, direct contact. A single touch, and it was sucked into his spatial portal. Especially now, with his incredibly strong physique, extreme speed, and astonishing endurance, collecting all the supplies from an entire mall didn't take long. After a few busy days, Xiao Ran decided to take a day off. He looked at Sujuan in the alternate dimension. Holy crap. Holy crap. This woman wasn't dead yet. Had she transcended the need for food, becoming an earthly immortal? Xiao Ran frowned. Although Chin Sujuan posed no threat in the alternate dimension, current espers were relatively weak, and her power couldn't be ignored. Besides, having a person living in his alternate dimension, it just felt awkward and uncomfortable. Wait, should he test the power of his spatial domain? Xiao Ran went to a small grove alone, then tossed Chin Sujuan out, his spatial domain already active. Xiao Ran! Chin Sujuan seethed, like a madwoman, black aura erupting from her body and quickly coalescing into a human form. It was understandable. After being locked in the alternate dimension for days, anyone would lose their sanity. It was remarkable she hadn't completely gone mad. But in the next instant, she vanished into thin air. Not taken by spatial swap, but she was directly reduced to the cellular level. Was that visible to the naked eye? Xiao Ran reached out, as if touching something, and then a warm current flowed into him. Chin Sujuan was dead. She died so easily, like an insignificant speck of dust, wiped away with a casual gesture. 1758 units of power. Xiao Ran noticed his spatial sense had surged by nearly 2,000 meters and immediately confirmed how much power Chin Sujuan had provided. Not as much as Duan Chong, but Duan Chong had just absorbed Chin Sui's power, which was why his energy levels had broken through 3,000 units. Chin Sujuan was by no means inferior. Xiao Ran pondered as he walked back. Chin Sujuan was formidable, right? She didn't even die when locked in the alternate dimension. Yet, within his spatial domain, such an almost unkillable cockroach died silently, without any resistance. What did this mean? High-level espers were terrifying. In future esper battles, if there was a significant level difference, it would be an absolutely one-sided fight, perhaps decided by a mere wave of a hand or a single thought. Just like his previous battle with Duan Chong. It wasn't just him. He figured that Esper's abilities would only grow stronger and more terrifying in the future. Only the physical type Espers would continue down the path of the reckless brute. However, physical types didn't need to worry. When strength and speed reached their peak, who needed fancy skills? A certain bald-headed fellow could attest to that. Xiao Ran returned to the mansion. Absorbing nearly 2,000 units of power had quite a kick. Playing cards, playing cards, playing cards. Such boring days. Several days passed in a flash, and 2 of the 14 people from Qinghong Tower had reached the critical point for evolution. Xiao Ran immediately got to work. The 2 didn't start at the same time, but about an hour apart. It didn't matter. Having absorbed the powers of Duan Chong and Chin Sujuan, how much stronger had he become? Handling 2 procedures simultaneously? A piece of cake. After another half hour, the first woman completed her evolution. Success. However, Xiao Ran didn't have time to ask what power she had awakened, focusing instead on the second woman. An hour later, the second woman also completed her evolution. Another success. Both women were overjoyed. One was named Chun Xiangxiang, the other was Xinyue. Chun Xiangxiang's power was to emit air blades of ordinary strength. After all, with only 1 unit's worth, how strong could it be? Guo Xinyue's power was rarer. She could accelerate plant growth. Unfortunately, there were no plants at home, so she had no way to use her ability. No problem. After resolving the side effects for the 2 women, Xiao Ran went to a seed company the next day to collect various seeds. He couldn't stockpile these, as his alternate dimension couldn't hold living things, forcing them and would kill them. Not everyone was like Chin Sujuan. Then he built a sunroom on top of the mansion, allowing sunlight in and maintaining a temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius. Of course, not purely from sun exposure, but with the help of an AC. During the day, the AC and sunlight could reach 20 degrees Celsius, but that wouldn't work at night. So, Xiao Ran prepared thick quilts to cover the outside of the sunroom's glass at night, providing insulation. He planted the seeds and watered them. Guo Xinyue then used her power. Visibly, the seeds sprouted and grew to about 3 inches high before stopping. Guo Xinyue's power was depleted. Pretty impressive, Xiao Ran nodded. Now, they could really eat fresh vegetables. But were plants force-ripened like this, as if injected with hormones, lacking in nutrition? Forget it, he thought. I don't lack food anyway. Maybe I should have her grow flowers instead. That night, 2 more women reached the critical point. However, even with Xiao Ran's intervention, they ended up with 2 goose eggs today. Both women's evolutions had failed. They didn't die, of course, but they didn't awaken any powers either. Xiao Ran rubbed his chin. He'd just have to wait for tomorrow's lottery draw. For the next 5 days, Xiao Ran initiated an evolution session once a day. Out of the 14 women, a total of 9 successfully evolved and gained abilities. The success rate was undeniably high, though not as high as Chin Sujuan's, perhaps. While Chin Sujuan boasted a 100% success rate, the ability users she created had no potential for further growth. They were merely paving the way for her. Xiao Ran was different. He merely gave them a helping hand, and they were no different from naturally awakened ability users. He was the truly awesome one. As for Baozi's 3 mates, 1 succeeded while 2 failed. The one that successfully evolved also experienced a massive growth in size, becoming comparable to Baozi. However, its ability wasn't an earth element shield, but shooting fireballs. Under Baozi's tutelage, the newly evolved dog was also incredibly affectionate toward Xiao Ran, showing none of the ferocity typical of evolved beasts. However, Baozi surprisingly ignored the two dogs that failed to evolve, only showing affection to the successful one. Look at you, mister. Innocent face, turning out to be such a heartbreaker. Xiao Ran chuckled. Indeed, after evolution, Baozi and ordinary dogs could hardly be considered the same species anymore. The size difference was just too vast. Forcing them together, Xiao Ran feared it might lead to tragedy. Never mind, he'd just keep those two dogs casually. There are always leftovers each day. Throwing them out would be a waste. What surprised Xiao Ran was that Baiyun, the newly evolved dog, also didn't exhibit the side effect of absorbing abilities. It merely played and roughhoused with Baozi, showing no intention of fighting seriously. So, did that side effect only affect humans? Ugh. Researching this didn't seem to have much point. Xiao Ran returned to the mansion. It was time to seriously consider his next steps. In Sioux City, he was already invincible. All major ability user factions had been dismantled by him, making it very, very difficult for him to achieve significant further improvement. Sure, there were still a few scattered ability users, but how strong could they be? Therefore, to continue growing stronger, his only option was to go elsewhere and join the rat race. It's not that I want to join this rat race, but if I don't, by the time the dust settles elsewhere, some powerhouse wielding the abilities of 10,000 or even 100,000 could show up. I'd be annihilated before I even knew what hit me. This wasn't him just scaring himself. Imagine if he was still at the level he was back in Jufu community and he encountered Duan Chong. That guy could approach him completely undetected and easily snap his neck. If you stagnate while others continuously grow stronger, you'll eventually be effortlessly obliterated. Ability users could acquire abilities by killing others. This very fact dictated that the competition among them would inevitably become absurdly intense, filled with blood and battle. There's nowhere to hide. Even if I chicken out and hid deep in the remote mountains, as ability users grow stronger, they could still easily find me. Take him, for example. His spatial perception already spanned 7 kilometers. Searching a mountain range would be a piece of cake, wouldn't it? Even if you hid deep within a mountain's belly, what good would it do? So Haidu City is a must-go. But how should I go? And should I take anyone with me? Xiao Ran pondered, resting his chin on his hand, very serious. My current physique can basically ignore severe cold. My speed and endurance are excellent. I can definitely run no slower than a sports car, easily hitting 120 miles per hour or even faster. In that case, even running to Haida City would only take me an hour or two, faster than when I used to take the hovercraft to Jufu community. Plus, I can still contact home via satellite phone. It seems like going to Haidu wouldn't cause any major disruptions. Then, shall I go tomorrow? Should I take anyone? Never mind. This time I'm going to scout things out. I'll have to establish a foothold before I can bring them over. Having made up his mind, Xiao Ran no longer hesitated. He announced his decision, and the women were all very unhappy. They couldn't be with Xiao Ran anymore. After so many days in the apocalypse, they had long since developed a dependence on Xiao Ran. You all wait patiently at home for now. I'll go scout ahead. If I can secure a place, I'll move all of you over, Xiao Ran consoled them. No matter how reluctant the women were, it was no use. Xiao Ran had made up his mind. A long night passed. A new day dawned. It was now the 101st day of the apocalypse, September 7th. Just as Xiao Ran was about to set off, he received a phone call. A phone call? Besides Xia Chuchio's pranks, there was only one other possibility for who would call him. He picked it up and saw the caller ID, Lawyer Lu. It was indeed Lu Mei, but this woman hadn't called him in many days. The last time they spoke, Lu Mei had heard women's voices in his background. When she asked, Xiao Ran didn't hide anything. Then, the great lawyer Lu probably got jealous and angry, immediately hanging up and ignoring him since. Xiao Ran hadn't called her back either. He wasn't about to give up the forest of women around him for a single tree like Lu Mei. She would have to be the one to change. So, had Lu Mei made her decision? Hello, he answered the call. Xiao Ran. Lu Mei's pleasant voice came through, laced with panic, her voice even trembling slightly. What do we do? Some bad guys have targeted us. Xiao Ran frowned. Don't be afraid. Tell me slowly. Lu Mei began to explain. She and her close friend had been living in a shelter built in the mountains. The area was already quite desolate and sparsely populated, so even after the cataclysm, no one went there. Until just now, a group of people showed up. At first, they tried to trick them into opening the door with friendly faces. After being refused, they showed their true colors and tried to break down the door violently. However, the shelter had been built at great expense and was very sturdy, so their efforts were futile. But before leaving, these people issued a vicious threat. They would return in the afternoon or the next day, and this time they'd bring explosives. If the two women didn't want to be buried alive, they'd better obediently open the door themselves. Although the shelter was strong, the two women weren't sure if it could withstand explosives. This terrified Lu Mei, and in her desperation, she had no choice but to call Xiao Ran. After all, Xiao Ran was the only one she could still maintain contact with. "Send me your exact location," Xiao Ran said after a moment's thought. This was the goddess he'd been trying to woo for days. There was no way he'd let someone else get their hands on her. Okay, good. Lu Mei quickly sent a text message with the latitude and longitude of her location. Xiao Ran checked on a map and found it was in a mountain in Zhening City, right next to Forest Park. The location was actually quite good. He wondered how much money and how many connections this Ia girl had pulled to get permission to build a shelter there. "Wait for me," he replied to Lu Mei concisely. From Dongshan to Lu Mei's shelter, the direct distance was only 167 kilometers. Even to Haidu, it was over 100 kilometers. Xiao Ran calculated that if he ran at full speed, he could probably reach Lu Mei's place within an hour, perhaps a little longer. After all, he hadn't traveled long distances like this before and wasn't sure. Firstly, he was capable of it now. Secondly, Lu Mei was one of the first women he'd known, and there was a certain special sentiment involved. It wasn't that he couldn't live without Lu Mei, but since she had specifically asked for help, he didn't mind making the trip. It was no trouble at all, really. "Let's go." Xiao Ran walked out of the mansion, confirmed his direction, and then started running. With over 7,000 instances of ability enhancement, how terrifying was his current speed? Whoosh! He shot forward, even faster than a top-tier sports car. At this rate, he could definitely reach Lu Mei's place within an hour. Moreover, he had his spatial perception active, undoubtedly the world's most incredible detection system. He had no fear of any collisions. A radius of 7 kilometers was completely under his control. If he still managed to crash, it would be truly bizarre. He could also use it to precisely control his direction, so there was no worry of getting lost while running. On a long-distance run, even a slight error in direction could lead to an astonishingly off-course result. After running for half an hour, Xiao Ran deliberately stopped to check his current latitude and longitude, cross-referencing it with a map. Finding he hadn't deviated from his course at all, he resumed running. In less than an hour, he had arrived in a mountainous area. This was a forest park, but not every mountain was within the park's boundaries. This provided some leeway, allowing to build a shelter on one of the undeveloped mountains. Building it within the forest park itself? The chances of being reported would be too high. Xiao Ran slowed down, his feet stepping onto the snow-covered ground. After so many days, the snow had become very compact, easily able to support the weight of a normal person. Xiao Ran walked step by step, his breathing still remarkably steady. His current stamina was simply monstrous. He had run 160 kilometers, possibly at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour. Yet after nearly an hour of sprinting, he was only slightly out of breath, with just a few beads of sweat on his forehead. It showed just how incredible his endurance was. And this was just a side effect of his ability enhancement. He wasn't a true physical type ability user. Otherwise, Xiao Ran couldn't imagine how fast or strong a physical type user of this caliber would be. Could they move a mountain with a single punch? Even if not now, surely in the future. Xiao Ran felt a surge of emotion as he pressed on. Before long, he spotted a very strange building. A small part of it was exposed above ground, while the majority was built into the mountainside, using the mountain itself as natural cover. There were two women in the building. One he didn't recognize, but wasn't the other the beautiful and glamorous top lawyer? He hadn't seen her in over 100 days. Her elegance remained, but her face now carried a touch more worry and loneliness. It made sense. With only two people in such a large shelter, how could they not feel lonely? It was a good thing there were at least two of them. If someone lived alone for that long, their mental state would surely suffer. He'd found them, and they seemed okay. Xiao Ran was no longer in a hurry and walked over slowly. Even moving slowly, it didn't take long for him to reach the front of the shelter. The gate and walls were entirely made of metal, but they didn't reflect light strongly, instead emitting a faint metallic sheen. However, the walls were also fitted with surveillance cameras and loudspeakers, convenient for communicating with those inside. But these devices were no longer working. Limited power, so they were undoubtedly conserving as much as possible. Xiao Ran knocked on the door. Thump, thump, thump. Inside the shelter, Lu Mei and Tu Xinyue both flinched. Are those people back again? Didn't they say the earliest they'd come was this afternoon? Mei, what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? The two women spoke at the same time, staring at each other wide-eyed, seeing only terror on each other's faces. If I had known, I would have notified Xiao Ran sooner, Lu Mei said, filled with regret. During her conversations with Xiao Ran, he had mentioned ability users and had revealed that he was one, though he hadn't specified what his abilities were. But wasn't being an ability user enough? Tu Xinyue stamped her foot and said, "What's the use of regretting it now? Besides, even if he showed up here right now, could he stand up to bullets?" She didn't believe in any ability users, thinking Xiao Ran had made it all up. Only a fool like Lu Mei would believe him. She had no idea what had possessed this silly girl to believe such nonsense. Lu Mei thought for a moment and couldn't help but sigh. That's right, those people have guns. Even if you have abilities, how can flesh and blood stand up to bullets? Look at the movies. How many ability users can remain standing under a hail of gunfire? So, should we pretend we're not here? She asked, uncertain. Those people were terrifying. When the surveillance was working earlier, she had seen the expressions on their faces. Upon discovering there were women inside, and more than one, their expressions had instantly turned wicked and greedy. Lu Mei had seen such expressions in courtrooms and prisons. They belonged to the most vicious criminals. Now that society had collapsed, were such villains truly everywhere? She was genuinely scared. Tu Xinyue gritted her teeth. Maybe it's not them. The roads are so bad now, and they were going to get explosives. They couldn't possibly be back this quickly. Perhaps. This could be our chance. Lu Mei nodded. We have to take the risk. The two of them turned the surveillance system back on. They saw a person standing at the door, but couldn't make out their features because they were wearing goggles. Outside, Xiao Ran noticed the surveillance camera activate. He waved at it, but when he didn't see Lu Mei's ecstatic reaction, he couldn't help but chuckle. He'd forgotten. He took off his goggles. Xiao Ran. Inside, Lu Mei blurted out, her face lit with pure joy and excitement. In her most helpless moment, a man had appeared as if descending from the heavens. How could she not be thrilled? Yeah, open the door, quickly, she urged Tu Xinyue. Tu Xinyue, however, looked skeptical. She first confirmed with Lu Mei, is that really Xiao Ran? Yes, it's him. Lu Mei nodded. Yeah, hurry and open the door. She couldn't hold back and was about to press the switch herself. But Tu Xinyue stopped her, saying gravely, My dear, naive Mei, haven't you considered? You only called him an hour ago. How could this Xiao Ran possibly appear before us so quickly? Lu Mei couldn't help but be startled. That's right. Xiao Ran is in Sujuan, and I'm here in Jining City. The straight line distance between us is nearly 200 kilometers. It's only been about an hour since I called him, and he's already found his way here? Is that possible? How could it be? Even if he came by plane, all the road signs are buried in snow. How could he have found this place? This is a mountainous area, and with this heavy snow, travel is difficult and visibility is poor. Even an army unit would struggle to find us this quickly, right? Could it be those guys impersonating him? Lu Mei blurted out, then immediately shook her head. No way. Even you don't know what Xiao Ran looks like. So how could they? Those men would have to know Xiao Ran's appearance first to impersonate him. That was basic logic. Tu Xinyue was also thinking. After a few seconds, she said, Could it be that Xiao Ran has been deceiving you all along? Maybe he's actually in Jining, or even nearby. As she finished speaking, she gasped, her shock palpable. What's the difference between Xiao Ran acting like this and some legendary stalker? It's too twisted, too terrifying. Lu Mei was also taken aback, but quickly shook her head. But I never told him our exact location. Oh, my dear, naive Mei, Tu Xinyue said, her expression that of someone who had seen through it all. If that guy was really determined to track you, what's so hard about spending a little money to ask the city government and find our place? Didn't you say he won the lottery jackpot? He has hundreds of millions. If he casually threw some money around as a bribe, how difficult would it be to get an address? And another thing, Tu Xinyue exclaimed, clapping her hands together in sudden realization. It's highly possible that Xiao Ran sent those men earlier. Think about it. How could it be such a coincidence? No one came for so many days, then suddenly a group of men found us. And right after, Xiao Ran appeared. Lu Mei said weakly, Could it be? Because I called Xiao Ran. No. Tu Xinyue shook her head repeatedly, her expression firm. Why don't you think about it the other way around? What if this is all Xiao Ran's plan? He deliberately had those men scare us, forcing you to call him for help. Then he rushes over, maybe even drives those men away. Let me ask you, wouldn't your heart flutter for him then? If he just pulled you into an embrace, you'd give in to him, wouldn't you? Lu Mei blushed. You have such a dirty mind. Tu Xinhua huffed. Exactly. That's the truth. The man outside is indeed Xiao Ran, no doubt about it. But he's the cause of all this. Lu Mei still felt it was too much of coincidence. She had spoken to Xiao Ran on the phone many times before and had even video called him. Xiao Ran had clearly been in his newly bought villa. How could he have rushed to Zhening after the disaster? Could it be that Xiao Ran has some kind of superpower, allowing him to get here and find this place so quickly? She suggested, offering a different perspective. Do you think that's possible? Tu Xinhua retorted. They looked at each other, each seeing the stubbornness in the other's eyes. If you don't want me to come in, I'll just head back then. Xiao Ran's voice suddenly sounded. What? Both women jumped in fright, thinking Xiao Ran had silently snuck in. But a glance at the security monitor showed Xiao Ran was still clearly at the door. Xiao Ran had activated his spatial domain. Within this domain, he was like a god, so projecting his voice inside was naturally simple and effortless. What's going on? Does he really have superpowers? The two women exclaimed simultaneously. Yeah, open the door. Lu Mei pleaded. This was Tu Xinhua's shelter, so she couldn't open the door on her own authority. Tu Xinhua hesitated for a long moment before saying, all right, but we need to be prepared. Go get kitchen knives from a kitchen. Lu Mei was about to object, but saw Tu Xinhua's insistent expression. It was clear Tu Xinhua wouldn't open the door unless she got the knives, so Lu Mei had to compromise and go. A moment later, she returned with 2 kitchen knives. Tu Xinhua nodded. Just as she was about to press the switch to open the door, her hand, already raised, froze in midair. Because, on the monitor, other people had suddenly appeared, the same group of thugs from earlier. Could it be? Was Xiao Ran really in cahoots with them? Those thugs are here. Quick, open the door and let Xiao Ran in. Lu Mei urged frantically. Even if Xiao Ran did have superpowers, there were over a dozen enemies, and he was unarmed. Those thugs had guns. How could he fight? No, Tu Xinhua immediately objected. Silly Mei, can't you see? They're together. No, absolutely not. Lu Mei insisted, her faith in Xiao Ran unwavering. Seeing Tu Xinhua still refusing to open the door, she couldn't hold back any longer and rushed forward to hit the switch herself. Tu Xinhua, convinced Xiao Ran was with the thugs, naturally wouldn't let her succeed and desperately pushed her away. The two of them struggled, grappling with each other. Outside, Xiao Ran couldn't help but chuckle. Lu Mei still trusted him quite a bit. His trip hadn't been in vain. He decided he would take Lu Mei back to Qin Feng Garden. As for this, she could just stay here. Xiao Ran turned around to face the dozen or so men who had just rushed over. He had, of course, been aware of them for a while. Even without looking back, he knew there were exactly 16 of them. All ordinary men, but every single one was armed with a gun and explosives. Lu Mei had said they threatened to blow up the shelter, and it seemed they weren't joking. The 16 men across from him also saw Xiao Ran and couldn't help but snicker. Hey, who's this? The guy those 2 chicks called over? Aren't we men? What's wrong with us? Why him? I told you, women have needs too. They've been cooped up for nearly 100 days. They must be crazy for a man. And yet they kept giving us the runaround. Are they looking down on us? Don't want to play with us? Then let's kill this guy. If they want to play, they can only play with us. They all pulled out their guns. Some toyed with them in their hands, while others aimed directly at Xiao Ran. Brothers, don't be in a rush to kill. Let's have some fun with him first. Yeah, one man proposed, and the others hooted in agreement. So, one of them stepped forward, pointing his gun at Xiao Ran's face. Get on your knees and suck me off, or I'll blow your brains out. He wasn't gay, of course. He was just deliberately taunting him. Xiao Ran glanced at him, with a wave of his right hand. Despite being 2 meters away, the man's head silently detached from his body. The wound was perfectly clean, as if sliced by a peerless divine blade. Then, with a soft thump, blood gushed out like a fountain. Thud! The head hit the ground, rolling a few times in the snow. Its eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't rest in peace, or perhaps couldn't believe what had just happened. Xiao Ran had used spatial cut. Previously, his spatial cut could only sever blood vessels, barely managing to cut through flesh. But after being enhanced by 7,000 units of supernatural energy, it could now slice through steel plates. A mere human head was nothing. Spatial cut was finally living up to its name. This scene stunned the remaining 15 men. Forgetting everything else, they all opened fire on Xiao Ran. Bang! 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 Muzzles flashed continuously, and a hail of bullets rained down on Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran extended his right hand, his expression nonchalant, the very picture of cool composure. A terrifying scene unfolded. All the bullets abruptly halted in midair before Xiao Ran, strikingly similar to the climactic scene at the end of The Matrix, where Neo, having become the One, stops bullets with a mere gesture, as if time itself had frozen. Spatial domain. Xiao Ran smirked, reached out, and plucked a bullet from the air. With a slight tilt of his head, all the other bullets instantly clattered to the ground. He could have done it without the theatrics, of course, but this way looked cooler. The 15 men felt as if the tops of their skulls had been blown clean off. They trembled uncontrollably. How could they possibly contend with an enemy like this? Xiao Ran toyed with the bullet in his hand. Then, with a flick of his finger, whoosh, it shot out. Thwack! It pierced clean through one man's forehead. Before dying, the man cast a wronged, almost pitiful, glance at Xiao Ran. Out of everyone here, why me? Then, he crashed to the ground, motionless. An Esper. The remaining 15 men blurted out, trembling uncontrollably. Oh! Xiao Ran swept his gaze over them. You know about Espers? For them to all blurt it out in unison like that, they'd clearly encountered such beings before, perhaps even had the term standardized. Otherwise, wouldn't they be shouting a jumble of terms like superhuman, Esper, or cultivator? He casually singled one out. You. Talk. Why, yes, sir. The man he'd pointed to stammered, teeth chattering. Our current bosses. They're a group of Espers. Xiao Ran picked up on the implication. This group of Espers. They only arrived recently. That's right. The man hurriedly confirmed. There are 9 of them. They just showed up at our place the day before yesterday. They killed a lot of our guys and forced us to be their dogs. We didn't dare refuse. Hey, don't act so wronged. Given how arrogant you all were when you first arrived, you've got no room to complain, Xiao Ran thought. Still, this one's sharp. He mentioned their numbers before I even asked. Xiao Ran smiled. These 9. Who are they? I only know one of them. Really, I swear, just one. He's the only one who gave his name. The man explained hastily. Terrified Xiao Ran wouldn't believe him. Go on. Xiao Ran cut him off. Tanatamiyoshi, the man said. Wait a minute. Xiao Ran's heart skipped a beat. That name definitely wasn't local. It practically screamed Japanese. Besides, he'd heard the surname Tanda just recently. Duan Chong. Hadn't he married a Japanese woman? And even married in her family? Whatever, it didn't matter. The point was, after the wedding, he'd taken a Japanese name. Tanda something or other. Such a coincidence? Could this be Duan Chong's father-in-law? Xiao Ran's killing intent flared instantly. He wasn't some rabid nationalist, but he was a son of Huaxia. He said coolly, lead the way. I want to meet this Colonel Tanda. Colonel, the man ventured cautiously. Boss, Tanda Tamiyoshi isn't in the military. Damn it. So what if I want to call a Jap? A devil. Xiao Ran shot him a glare, and the man wisely shut his mouth. Lead the way, Xiao Ran commanded. And so, the 15 men walked ahead, with Xiao Ran following leisurely, hands clasped behind his back. They had, of course, discarded all their explosives and similar encumbrances. Anything that might slow them down would only waste Xiao Ran's time. The party descended the mountain, their figures gradually receding into the distance. Meanwhile, the tussle between Lu Mei and Tu Xinyue had paused. Lu Mei, despite her years of yoga, was clearly no match for the gym-toned Tu Xinyue and was panting for breath. But as her worried gaze swept over the security monitor, she suddenly froze. Xiao Ran? Where was he? Tu Xinyue noticed it too and snorted. See? I told you they were in cahoots. Why else wouldn't there have been a fight? Lu Mei refused to believe it, her worry deepening. Maybe they forced him to go with them. They had guns, after all. Tu Xinyue scoffed. It's far more likely they're working together. Lu Mei was a bundle of frustration and anxiety, pacing like an ant on a hot griddle. She desperately wanted to rescue Xiao Ran, but knew that with her meager strength, she'd be walking into a slaughter. Yet, staying put felt like betraying Xiao Ran, who had come all this way to help her. Hadn't she put him in danger? She was frantic. Tu Xinyue, ever one to add fuel to the fire, said, Hey, let's just watch the playback. Then we'll know. She pulled up the recording, rewound it to the moment Xiao Ran confronted the armed men, and hit play. And then, both women's jaws simultaneously dropped, their mouths forming perfect O's. Gods! Were they watching a deity in action? Xiao Ran followed the 15 men down the mountain. Their hideout, as it turned out, wasn't far, just a residential complex at the mountain's base. It was an affluent, gated community filled entirely with villas. Nestled near the forest park with its scenic mountains, clear waters, and fresh air, it was indeed a prime location. Under Xiao Ran's relentless questioning as they walked, The men spilled the beans about their atrocities since the apocalypse began. Truth be told, while they were currently enslaved, they hadn't been saints before. They were a roving gang of thugs who'd been in the area when the apocalypse hit. They later infiltrated this community, slaughtered most of the men, and turned any remotely attractive women into their personal playthings. However, driven by hunger, they had to venture out almost daily to scavenge for food. Then, Tonda Tomoyoshi and his crew of 9 arrived. They'd immediately killed several of the gang members to establish dominance, terrifying the rest into utter submission, crushing any thought of resistance. Under Tonda Tomoyoshi's command, their duties expanded beyond scavenging for food. They were also forced to hunt for other survivors. If any were found, they had to bring them back if possible. If not, they were to report their location. And if they returned empty-handed at the end of the day, a brutal whipping was considered getting off easy. So why didn't they just escape? They wouldn't dare. One of Tonda Tomoyoshi's 9 espers possessed the ability to administer toxins. He had already dosed each of them with a lethal poison. Every day, this esper had to perform a ritual to draw out the poison, only to immediately re-inflict it, effectively resetting a deadly timer. Fail this daily treatment, and the poison would activate, leading to a swift death. Under such a threat, how could any of them dare to harbor thoughts of escape or rebellion? Their only option was to serve obediently, toiling away their lives. Xiao Ran activated his enhanced spatial perception. Sure enough, deep within each man's body, he detected peculiar black substances, like tiny spikes embedded in their blood, flesh, and bone. He could, in theory, use spatial exchange to swap out all these black particles. But they were incredibly tiny and far too numerous, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of them, and his daily uses of spatial exchange were limited. No, that approach was impractical. What about his spatial domain, then? Xiao Ran discreetly activated it, enveloping the 15 men who remained completely oblivious. With a mere thought, he targeted one man, and instantly, all the black substances within him vanished. It worked. Spatial domain, you're freaking awesome. Art. But instead of relief, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air, followed by harsh, ragged gasps. Xiao Ran looked over. The man he'd operated on was now missing both arms. They were hovering eerily in midair, a good 2 meters away from his torso. Stranger still, not a single drop of blood gushed from the 4 clean wounds. Air. Whoops. My bad. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. My bad, my bad. First time using this ability for surgery. Still a bit rusty, you know? Please bear with me. This was clearly a dry joke, but not one of the 15 men cracked a smile. Awkward. Xiao Ran walked over and reattached the severed arm for one of them. Within his domain, he was like a god. Wounds healed the moment he willed it, without a single drop of blood spilling. See? All better. Xiao Ran chuckled. He dismissed his domain, and still, no blood gushed out. Everyone stared, dumbfounded, feeling that Xiao Ran was truly no different from a deity. Everyone except one person. The man whose arms had just been reattached. With a tear-streaked face, he stammered, "Boss, you put my arms on backward." Huh? Xiao Ran glanced over. It was true. No wonder it looked a bit off. Sigh, it's my first time doing this kind of arm reattachment surgery. Isn't it normal to make a few mistakes? At least I didn't leave a scalpel inside the patient. However, he had only performed this surgery to test if he could neutralize poisons, not out of any real intention to save these men. They're a bunch of evildoers and lackeys for those damn islanders at that. What right do they have to my aid? Just make do. You could be left-handed from now on, he consoled. But I was already left-handed. The man was on the verge of tears. Xiao Ran roared with laughter. Then you could be right-handed. Isn't it good to go with the crowd? Yes. Seeing the threat in Xiao Ran's expression, the man could only nod with a bitter smile. So what if his arms were swapped? At least they were still attached. What if Xiao Ran got angry and tore them off again, refusing to put them back? He couldn't ask for too much. The others shivered uncontrollably. This man was terrifying. No, not just terrifying. He was as uncanny as a god or a demon. Let's go, don't just stand there gawking. The group entered the upscale residential complex and arrived at the King Villa, the most prominent one. It was a 4-story villa, and surprisingly, the snow around it had been completely cleared. Through his spatial perception, Xiao Ran had already confirmed there were 13 people inside, 9 men and 4 women. However, 4 pairs were currently getting it on, but it was obvious the 4 women had numb, lifeless expressions, as if they were dead. Are these 9 men Toda Tomoyoshi and his group? Xiao Ran frowned slightly. From their appearance, these 9 men looked no different from locals. No, there's a difference. All 9 men were intentionally growing mustaches just below their noses. They hadn't been growing them for long, so they were still faint. Very ugly, like overgrown nose hair. Xiao Ran tossed out 4 stones, and then activated spatial swap. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 men appeared out of thin air, almost simultaneously, all stark naked. Some were even still mid-thrust, only to find themselves humping the air, nearly breaking their backs. These 4 were, of course, the ones assaulting the women. Now that Xiao Ran had seen it, he wouldn't allow them to continue. What's going on? #yin at. Some spoke Chinese, but others spoke Japanese. Xiao Ran's knowledge of Japanese was limited to bakayero and yamit, so he had no idea what the Japanese words meant. It turned out that even these island scumbags had a sense of shame. The 4 men covered themselves with their hands while scanning their surroundings with angry, bewildered eyes, their powers ready to erupt at any moment. Lu Ikuan, what is this situation? One of the islanders asked. The 15 local men were in a bind. They couldn't afford to offend the islander ability users, especially since they were poisoned and needed their help. But could they afford to offend Xiao Ran? Look at what he just done. Even a god couldn't do better. Xiao Ran cut straight to the chase. Are you all little Japs? The 4 men simultaneously turned to Xiao Ran. So you're behind all this? Kill him. Without exchanging a glance, the 4 attacked in perfect unison. Instantly, 4 different powers shot towards him. There were ice arrows, fireballs, and stone pellets flicked from fingers with astonishing speed and terrifying destructive power. The last was a dazzling beam of light, bright enough to blind someone, aimed straight at Xiao Ran's eyes. Their coordination was excellent. Although the light beam was the weakest attack, it could blind Xiao Ran, at least temporarily, allowing the other 3 attacks to severely injure or even kill him. Xiao Ran opened a spatial gate and absorbed all the attacks. From now on, I'm an offensive kaleidoscope. Who can guess my true abilities? After that one exchange, the 4 devils were naturally astounded. How could this be? What kind of ability user are you? Seeing they didn't answer, Xiao Ran asked again, Is Toda Tamayoshi among you? I am here. At that moment, a man's voice sounded. The villa's main door opened, and a man in his early 30s walked out. Not only had he started growing the characteristic islander mustache, but his clothes were also Japanese style. It was a good thing he was an ability user, or he would have frozen to death. Yet, he stood there braving the severe cold, looking fearless. Who are you? Toda, Tamayoshi asked. The man spoke perfect local dialect, without a trace of foreign accent, as if he were a native. Xiao Ran said flatly, Do you know Duan Chong? Duan Chong. Toda Tamayoshi seemed taken aback. How do you know Duan Chong? So he does know him. Xiao Ran, of course, didn't answer. So you came from High City? Why did you come all the way here? Baka, Toda Tamayoshi flared up. I am not your prisoner. And how dare a mere Chinese dog question me? Just then, 4 more islander men walked out of the villa. One was dressed in typical samurai attire, a katana tied to his waist, his hand resting on the hilt but not drawing the blade, like a legendary Iajutsu master. Not being honest, not cooperating. Xiao Ran smiled, activating spatial cut. How terrifying was his current spatial cut? It could slice through steel. Just imagine, with such horrific cutting power applied to the brain, what brain could withstand it? Instantly, the 4 naked men's eyes rolled back, and they dropped dead. Xiao Ran said nonchalantly, Answer my questions, or die. Toda Tamayoshi and his remaining 4 men were utterly horrified. Those 4 were all ability users, not ordinary people. Why they died so silently? Although there were differences in strength among their group of 9, with Toda Tamayoshi being the leader and the strongest, the individual power gaps weren't enormous. No one among them could instantly kill another. But Xiao Ran? He had insta-killed 4 of them. This Chinese man is so strong. Toda Tamayoshi immediately burst into laughter. Don't be rash. Don't be rash. Since you know Duan Chong, we're on the same side. Please come in. Come in. He even gave Xiao Ran a 90-degree bow. Talk about masters of the bow. These islanders are all like that. Make a mistake, give a bow, and everything's fine. Xiao Ran smiled and stepped towards the villa. As he took his first step, the 15 local henchmen who had been aiding the villains collapsed one by one for each step with a distinct rhythm. Hood, hood, hood. By the time he walked into the villa, all 15 were dead on the ground. Toda Tamayoshi and his 4 remaining men looked at each other, their faces filled with utter terror. Deng Tianfui and his 4 companions lacked even the courage to flee, dejectedly following Xiao Ran into the villa. However, Deng Tianfui still clung to a sliver of hope. Xiao Ran knew Duan Chong. He was crystal clear on how strong Duan Chong was. Although he looked down on Chinese people immensely, Duan Chong was an exception, so strong that Deng Tianfuai could only tremble before him. So, if he just revealed his identity, Xiao Ran surely wouldn't dare kill him, out of respect for Duan Chong. After all, knowing Duan Chong's power, who would dare to offend him? Xiao Ran walked into the villa and casually found a sofa to sit on. "What's your relationship with Duan Chong?" he asked. He had initially thought Deng Tianfuai was Duan Chong's father-in-law, but their ages clearly did match. "You've finally asked the crucial question," Deng Tianfuai immediately said. "Duan Chong is my brother-in-law. My younger sister is Deng Tianing's." "Heh, Duan Chong never mentioned he had a brother-in-law. Where are you all from?" Xiao Ran asked again. "I do." Deng Tianfuai was quite cooperative, speaking continuously without Xiao Ran needing to prompt him further. After the cataclysm, an important figure in our Japanese community soon discovered that contact with the toxic hailstones could trigger evolution. This esteemed individual wasn't stingy in the slightest and shared this news with everyone in the community. After discussions among our leadership, we decided to evolve collectively. So, even though over 90% of our people died, we managed to form a team of over 300 superhumans and swept through the Gubei New District. However, Haidu has too many people, and the number of superhumans is also astounding. Soon, several factions rose to oppose us. For now, we can't expand our territory further and have to find another way. We sent a group to the surrounding areas to plunder the population, force them to evolve, and immediately steal their abilities upon success. Then, we'll fight our way back and unify Haidu. Then, using Haidu as our base, we'll contact our homeland. At that time, we'll sweep across all of China and complete the glorious mission our ancestors failed to achieve. The more he spoke, the more excited he became, even gesticulating wildly. The other 4 Japanese also lit up, hyped as if they were on something. So ruthless. Even Xiao Ran was a little surprised. How many Japanese were in Haidu? About 400,000, perhaps. So, after learning about evolution, this bunch of Japanese had all volunteered, even at the cost of 90% of their population dying. That was so damn twisted. No wonder these Japanese always produced incredibly perverted movies and did such bizarre, unthinkable things. It turned out perversion was etched into their very blood and bones, into their genes. And another thing, the apocalypse amplified people's anxieties. One had to remember, there were no legal constraints now. Nobody cared if you killed someone. So, given the historical enmity between China and Japan, how could the Japanese living in China not be terrified? It was precisely because they were afraid that they would frantically seek power and then enslave others, just like their ancestors did. Fortunately, Haidu was full of talented people. Despite being so crazed, the Japanese had still failed to unify the city and were stopped by other factions. Even so, the Japanese hadn't been wiped out, which showed they were also very, very strong. Moreover, unable to win head-on, they had even thought of sending people out to surrounding areas to kill existing superhumans and cultivate new ones. Their schemes were not only venomous, but also quite clever. "Sir, how did you meet Duan Chong, and how strong is he now?" Deng Tianfuai asked, full of pride. Duan Chong wasn't the top master in their group, but he was strong enough to rank in the top 10. That was his brother-in-law. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. "Duan Chong and I? It was one of those no-fight, no-friendship situations." Deng Tianfuai understood this old Chinese saying and couldn't help but smile. No fight, no friendship. After a fight, you become good friends. However, I tend to be a bit heavy-handed. I accidentally killed Duan Chong, Xiao Ran added calmly. Huh? The smile on Deng Tianfuai's face instantly froze. Haha, you must be joking, he said with a dry laugh. No, I'm not, Xiao Ran said calmly. You must be, Deng Tianfuai shouted, on the verge of tears. If Duan Chong had died at Xiao Ran's hands, would this Chinese man show them any mercy? They'd be goners for sure. Therefore, he was now utterly fixated on denying it. I'm really not joking, Xiao Ran said again. You are. You are. Deng Tianfuai became hysterical. Xiao Ran shook his head. He activated spatial cut, and Deng Tianfuai's head immediately lolled to the side. He died silently. A top-tier Esper with 7,000 units of power. Any one of his abilities would be absurdly strong. How many units of abilities did Deng Tianfuai have? No more than 50 at most. This was an absolute stomp. Run. The remaining 4 Japanese had completely lost their will to fight, scared out of their wits, and scattered in panic. Still trying to run? Xiao Ran chuckled. He tossed out 4 pebbles and activated spatial exchange. A bizarre scene unfolded. The 4 Japanese had clearly run out of the villa, yet they strangely reappeared inside. They froze for a moment, then started running again. Xiao Ran, unhurried, continued tossing pebbles. Exchange. Zip, 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 zip. Those 4 Japanese reappeared inside the house again. By now, no matter how slow or stupid they were, they knew Xiao Ran was toying with them. Let's fight him. We are the bravest warriors. Kill. The self-proclaimed samurai was the first to act, finally drawing his sword. But he'd barely drawn it an inch when he collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Xiao Ran opened a spatial gate again and, with a gentle push using spatial compression, forced the remaining 3 Japanese inside. All dealt with. Actually, he could have insta-killed these Japanese, but simply killing them wouldn't sate his anger. He had to toy with them, drive them to utter despair. Even in death, you'll carry immense resentment. You think you can lord it over us on our land? It wasn't possible over 70 years ago, and it's not possible now. Xiao Ran looked north. Haidu was in that direction. There were over 300 Japanese there now, and all of them were superhumans. Your heads. Xiao Ran called dibs. Nobody better try to take them from me. Xiao Ran tossed out the corpses from his dimensional space and touched each one. A warm current flowed into him. About 362 units. Quite a harvest. What about the side effects? Xiao Ran headed up the mountain and soon appeared in front of 2 Xinyue shelter. He knocked on the door, then looked at the security camera. Open sesame. The next moment, the sound of machinery whirring was heard, and the large door slowly opened. The door opened from the middle, parting to both sides. It was made of alloy, a full 20 centimeters thick, quite an exaggeration. Then, the thump, thump, thump of hurried footsteps approached, and Lu Mei, whom he hadn't seen for days, rushed out. Because she was running, her chest heaved like tumultuous waves. Xiao Ran's side effects hadn't even kicked in, yet he already felt a profound sense of awe. Xiao Ran. Lu Mei had already reached him and threw herself into his arms. Excited. Immensely. Xiao Ran felt it too. Lawyer Lu's bosom was truly ample. Xiao Ran also gave Lu Mei a hug. Just then, another woman emerged, her gaze fixed on Xiao Ran, filled with surprise and uncertainty. Tu Xinyue. Although Xiao Ran already knew what she looked like, seeing her with his spatial perception versus his naked eye, the impact was entirely different. They say birds of a feather flock together, and it really seemed true. Lu Mei's close friend was also a great beauty. Though perhaps a tiny bit less stunning than the great lawyer Lu, she was definitely top tier. She had bright eyes and pearly teeth with shoulder-length hair. Her eyes were particularly lively, giving off a mischievous air. Tall with long legs and a waist so slender one could span it with their hands. A true model's figure. If one had to point out a flaw, or rather, something that didn't quite meet Xiao Ran's aesthetic, it was that her chest was a bit small, a B-cup perhaps, the smallest among the women he'd encountered. Xiao Ran, you're incredible. Lu Mei finally recovered her composure, realizing their embrace was a bit too intimate. She shyly pushed him away, her pretty face flushed red. TSK, TSK. Lawyer Lu was usually the epitome of cool aloofness, typically as frosty as ice. But now, with that blush, an alluring charm washed over him. Even though Xiao Ran had seen his fair share of charm, his heart still skipped a beat. Xiao Ran smiled. Didn't I tell you about ability users? Coincidentally, I happen to be quite strong. Lu Mei nodded repeatedly. When we rewatched the surveillance footage and saw you subdue those thugs, yeah, and I couldn't believe it. Seeing Lu Mei finally mention her, Tu Xinyue stepped forward. Hello, I'm Tu Xinyue, Mimi's best friend. Her voice was soft and sweet, almost cloyingly so. Oh, trying to cozy up to me now? Too late, sis. Xiao Ran merely gave her a slight nod. Thank you for taking care of my Mimi all these days. Lu Mei's pretty face flushed red again. Xiao Ran had actually called her my Mimi, clearly a declaration of ownership. Before the apocalypse, even if she were very interested in a golden catch like Xiao Ran, she would have maintained her dignity. After all, she was a prominent lawyer. How could she be swept off her feet so easily? Besides, Xiao Ran had other women around him. She was so proud and ambitious. How could she be willing to share a man? But today's ordeal had taught her that in this apocalypse, without a powerful man to protect her, she was incredibly vulnerable, easily becoming someone else's plaything. What standing did she have to be jealous or possessive? Tu Xinyue grew anxious. What did Xiao Ran mean by that? Was he going to take Lu Mei away? What about her then? She quickly said, come in and sit down first. Xiao Ran considered for a moment, then nodded. The house was better than the hovercraft. The three entered the house. Tu Xinyue pressed something by the door, and the main door slowly closed. Xiao Ran, you must be hungry after your journey. Have something to eat. Tu Xinyue was very attentive, fetching canned food from the kitchen. She was an apocalypse enthusiast and had built this doomsday shelter, so naturally, she hadn't forgotten to stock up on food. However, it was only this kind of apocalyptic canned food, which could be stored at room temperature for at least 3 years. Xiao Ran glanced at it. Ugh, even his dog wouldn't eat this stuff. He didn't hold back. Instead, he continuously pulled hot dishes out of his dimensional space, placing them one by one on the table. Amidst Lu Mei and Tu Xinyue's dumbfounded stares, he chuckled, better eat my food. It's still hot. The two women were stunned speechless, unable to recover for a long time. It was Lu Mei, having already accepted the concept of ability users, who recovered first. She picked up her chopsticks, took a bite, and exclaimed in joyful surprise, It's real. It's really real. Tu Xinyue, like a soulless robot, also picked up some food, put it in her mouth, chewed a couple of times, and swallowed. It was as if she hadn't tasted anything at all. After a while, she jumped up, exclaiming, I must be dreaming. Mimi, quick, pinch yourself and see if it hurts, then tell me if I'm dreaming. Lu Mei rolled her eyes at her. Are you really my best friend? Smack. She slapped the back of Tu Xinyue's hand. Tu Xinyue yelped in pain, but it also completely snapped her out of her daze. She stared blankly at Xiao Ran and suddenly asked, Master, are you accepting disciples? Xiao Ran shot her a glare. Quite the leap in logic there. Even if I did take you as a disciple, you'd only be good for warming my bed. You wouldn't be able to learn my skills. Xiao Ran ignored her and said to Lu Mei, Mimi, eat up while it's hot. MHM. Lu Mei nodded obediently. A lawyer's greatest strength was calmly analyzing cases. She clearly understood the vast gap between herself and Xiao Ran now. His power had been proven, and now he could conjure delicious, steaming hot meals out of thin air. And her? What did she have? A smart woman didn't need to be told. She would naturally understand her place. Tu Xinyue, however, was quite thick-skinned. After her shock, she also sat down and started eating. Don't let her slim figure fool you. She had a huge appetite and could really pack it away. For every bite Lu Mei took, Tu Xinyue could take two. Clearly, after so many days of only eating canned food, she had been deprived and was starving, eating until her little belly was round and full. Xiao Ran didn't even glance at her. Out of consideration for Tu Xinyue having sheltered Lu Mei for over 100 days, he didn't mind letting her benefit a little, enjoy a full meal, satisfy her cravings. But to expect him to be pleasant to her, or even take her with him, impossible. You thought I was a con artist before. Seeing Lu Mei was almost full, Xiao Ran leaned close to her ear and said, Remember what I told you about the side effects after absorbing abilities? Lu Mei was startled and quickly looked up at Xiao Ran. She saw his eyes were bloodshot, and his face was abnormally flushed. Instantly, her eyes turned sultry and alluring. She felt shy, yet also a sense of anticipation. Lawyer Lu had never admitted defeat in her life. So what if Xiao Ran already had other women by his side? Could they compare to her? It was only because she had been trapped here all this time that those other orioles and swallows had a chance to sneak in. When this young lady was having her moments with Xiao Ran, you lot were probably still cultivating in some vixen's den. She was full of confidence, certain that as long as she was with Xiao Ran, he would be utterly captivated by her. This young lady is so stunning, and with such a great figure. Sometimes, after a shower, she would narcissistically admire herself in the mirror for ages, wondering which man, blessed with luck from 9 lifetimes of burning incense, would marry her. This scoundrel is getting lucky. Let's go to the room, she said, biting her lip. Xiao Ran naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. The side effects had been acting up for about 10 minutes, but since Lu Mei was still eating, he hadn't interrupted and had endured it for a bit. He swept Lu Mei up into his arms and strode off. Hey, where are you two going? Tu Xinyue froze for a moment before chasing after them. Following Lu Mei's directions, Xiao Ran had already entered a bedroom. As he went in, he hooked the door with his foot, and it slammed shut. Bang! Tu Xinyue ran smack into the closed door, yelping as she nursed her bumped nose.